One Lin was out hunting food for his girlfriend, finally bringing back a small bite. To eat expecting a warm welcome, Lin was simple enough to be happy with that, but he had absolutely no clue that a frozen wasteland was nothing compared to the venom of an ungrateful woman. The deepest scars always come from those closest to your heart, but watch this, because his revenge will be legendary. How did he end up scavenging in the frost, just days after the World Cup? Nightmare struck, plunging the entire planet into a brutal new ice age. Everything was encased in deep frost, if the bitter cold did not claim you. The starvation did. Lin had no choice but to hunt while his girl waited back at their shelter. Today, he ventured into a completely untouched zone. One look at the pristine ice proved that no living soul had ever been here. Then disaster, an earthquake ripped through the ice. A freak occurrence in this frozen world, the massive fissure opened up and Lin fell straight down like a stone. Desperate to survive, he slammed his climbing pick directly into the icy wall, dragging himself to a stop. It actually worked. He hit a soft, deep drift of snow at the bottom. Lin thought he was the luckiest guy alive, but that relief died when a low, heavy growling started echoing through the cavern. That is when Lin realized terrifying beasts ruled beneath the frost. And humans were their favorite prey. Right now, he was on the menu. He bolted, but get this, there was another creature lurking in the shadows. Lin was cornered, but just as the monster leaped, a massive ice spear impaled it. Talk about lucky, but before he could breathe, a massive avalanche triggered right above him. The snow buried him completely. In this freezing hell, that was a death sentence. Only his pale hand remained visible, and while he lay there unconscious, that mysterious beast quietly slithered closer, underneath that heavy white blanket. Lin felt a bizarre chill slide right into his soul. Somehow he survived, but this deep cavern was empty, no food, nothing. All Lin managed to salvage was a single, precious bar of chocolate for her, heading back. With humanity forced to live underground, the journey home was a gauntlet. He saw desperate survivors clashing over scraps, a reminder that everyone is a threat now. Trust was dead. He kept his head down and eyes wide, tracking every movement. Reaching his shelter, he tapped out their private code so she would unlock the door. Just like every single time, he returned from that freezing wasteland. She held him tight to chase away the chill, whispering sweet promises to heat him up. But Lin was always careful. He secured the heavy deadbolt first. Safety always came before pleasure. Then he proudly handed her his prize, that single block of chocolate. She rewarded him with a warm kiss, but the moment he confessed that was all he had, her warm smile instantly vanished. Walking away cold, days went by, and Lin somehow gathered a real stash of food, planning to cultivate it. Suddenly, he heard that secret knock again. Expecting his girl, he swung the door open without a second thought. A heavy wooden bat instantly cracked against his skull, sending him crashing backward. He slammed hard into the cold wall. Cheneming had completely betrayed him. To make it worse, she turned it on him, screaming that he was hoarding supplies. Because of his apparent greed, she had already replaced him with another guy. Her side, that absolute bastard, even had the nerve to tell Mo that a weakling like him never deserved a girl like her anyway. He claimed he was actually doing him a favor by sparing him a slow, lonely death. Then they brutally beat his body, while his toxic girlfriend laughed right in his face, and that was how Mo died. But then that strange sensation returned. Suddenly, a strange tingle washed over his body and he woke up. He had survived. He was sure he had died. The phantom pain was too real to be a dream. That was when he looked out the window and finally understood. Only 24 hours remained before the entire world froze. Somehow, Mo had regressed. In many places, angry crowds were actively protesting. The rich high society only cared about partying, laughing at the poor. Meanwhile, local thugs and criminals went about their usual business. Now, only 23 hours and some minutes remained before absolute chaos. Those strange lights in the sky were already appearing, starting everything. If his memories were correct, she was about to call him right now. And right on cue, the phone rings. His traitorous ex is calling. Mo had been blinded by her gorgeous looks, ignoring her toxic personality. He answered, and the very first thing she did was demand money. It was time to end this. Mo coldly said they were finished and hung up. With this second chance at life, he refused to let anyone betray him again. He needed to prepare well. In the previous life of our protagonist, he didn't know that everything would start to freeze in 24 hours. Within 4 hours, thick snow would cover everything, making the city chaos. Even worse, Mo had to gather as many resources as possible quickly. Along with daily necessities, he desperately needed self-defense gear. So he planned to look for a weapon, maybe a pistol. Suddenly, police officers spotted the boy wandering around at this late hour. They thought he looked suspicious and decided to work together to arrest him. One cop stepped out of the patrol car and barked at Mo, ordering him not to move. Pointing his gun, he commanded Mo to freeze. His partner spoke into the radio, reporting that they had a suspect. The armed officer demanded to know what Mo was holding in his hand. Mo calmly analyzed the situation, noticing the cop's obvious panic. He said he was just holding his phone, but the countdown hit 0. He had no time to waste on some paranoid cop. He silently prayed. They would let him go after a quick inspection, but the officer barked. Another warning telling him not to approach. Meanwhile, his partner demanded to see his backpack, telling Mo to hand it over immediately. Mo explained it was just office files, reaching inside to pull out a notebook. Panicking, the officer screamed that it was a weapon and fired a shot. The bullet raced toward him without mercy. For a brief second, Mo thought he was done for. His second chance was ending before it even started. But he refused to die. Right then, his eye began to glow. With electric blue streaks, an aura surged around him as the bullet approached. Amazed, Mo realized he could actually see its precise trajectory. He stared at the bullet's trajectory, wondering if time itself had somehow slowed down. So he tilted his head, realizing this was no illusion. He could actually dodge this thing. Mo cursed the officer, shouting that he was a citizen and the cop had no right to fire. Rushing straight toward the shooter, he muttered that he had no time to waste on fools. The missed bullet struck the ground, and instantly thin layers of ice spread across the concrete. Mo moved with such insane speed that he left blurs trailing in his wake. He connected a brutal punch straight to the officer's face, shattering his jaw completely. Blood splattered as the cop collapsed onto the pavement right next to his heavy partner. The second officer shook with fear, looking down at his utterly wrecked partner. Terrified and desperate to comprehend what kind of monster had just done this, the remaining cop scrambled backward, falling flat on his back in absolute horror. Shakingly aiming his gun, he screamed, demanding to know what the hell Mo even was. But the young man only walked closer, calmly replying that even he did not know. A single blood-curdling scream echoed through the quiet Brooklyn streets a second later. Later, the heavy officer frantically called for backup over his police radio. He reported an officer down and a highly dangerous suspect fleeing with a stolen weapon. He begged the dispatch for a quick response while a strange blue trail formed. The cop cursed his terrible luck, entirely unaware of the glowing trace nearby. Mo dashed away, rushing straight to apartment 409 and collapsing inside. He hit the floor as the crackling energy finally faded away around him. Gasping for air, he stared at his hands, wondering if any of this was real. Eager to find out how he pulled off those insane moves, he grabbed the gun to test it. Determined to see if he could repeat the trick, he aimed straight at his mirror. He pulled the trigger, his ice magic flaring as one eye glowed bright cyan. With a sudden burst, Mo lunged forward and caught the bullet barehanded. A wild grin spread across his face as the realization hit. He had finally awakened. He stared at his ice-covered shoulder, completely amazed by this newfound superpower. But why now, considering the global freeze had not even begun yet? Did moving alongside the bullet at supersonic speeds somehow trigger his evolution? This speed manipulation might not look sophisticated on paper, but trust me, it is huge. Combined with his knowledge of the upcoming apocalypse, he was miles ahead of everyone else. A sudden knock at the door broke his concentration, forcing him to turn around. His elderly neighbor, Mrs. Fang, stood outside, asking him about the loud gunshot. Mo quickly lied, claiming it was just his television after he broke the remote. He apologized deeply for the noise, but the old woman only let out a heavy sigh. She warned him to stay alert, reminding him of the recent supermarket incident. The streets were getting too dangerous. Mo thanked her, promising to be careful. The kind woman headed back to her place, advising him not to overwork. With that final warning, she gently closed his apartment door. The young man immediately shifted his focus back to his main priority, stockpiling resources. Thinking about the supermarket his neighbor mentioned, he realized something huge. It likely held every single item he needed to survive the end times. Wearing a sly grin, he decided it was time to hoard his food. Over at the local supermarket, a bored cashier yawned under the security camera. The lens caught Mo examining the shelves, but in the blink of an eye, he vanished. He vanished into a complete blur. The cashier did not even notice, yawning from exhaustion. Boom, a massive receipt suddenly popped up on her register screen. She stared at it, wondering who could have made such a bizarre purchase. At the bottom, a note told her to stay calm and head home immediately. She hesitated. This strange receipt made absolutely no sense at all. Odd checkout messages after getting robbed. Then, two men walked in. They stepped into the convenience store, and one held a heavy pistol. The cashier sighed in frustration. Then, the gun barrel was pointed at her. He aimed directly at her forehead, apologizing coldly because this was a robbery. She had to hand over every single dollar in the cash register immediately. As he barked at her to hurry, an icy aura crept inside. The weapon began to freeze, and thick frost rapidly coated the entire store. A strange leg stepped inside. One thief shivered, asking why it got so cold. His partner yelled to look at the door, and trust me, this sight is pure nightmare fuel. A towering, slender figure in white armor, pure terror. The robber shrieked, demanding to know what kind of monster they were facing. His partner fired instantly, but the bullets just curved around its thick blue blood. He panicked, screaming that they could not kill this thing as he shot again. A cold hand reached out. In a flash, it grabbed him. Mocking the thief's face, the beast slowly peeled away his skin with its fingers. It tore his face completely off, grumbling that he tasted absolutely terrible. She recorded everything. Her lens captured the creature tearing him apart. Nearby, police officers watched her shocking live stream on their phones. They joked about how crazy viral streams were, but then an error popped up. A massive warning popped up, and no, this was definitely not a drill. Heavy sirens blared across the entire city. Mo opened his front door. He heard a broadcast from the Department of Logistics and Security. It was starting. The nightmare was finally here. An unexplained, freezing cold wave was rapidly sweeping the entire city. Everyone was ordered to lock their windows and doors immediately. Brooklyn would suffer first. Over 1 hour and 9 minutes had already passed. Inside Building 58 of the new district, in a quiet apartment, the emergency broadcast urged every single citizen to listen closely. Meanwhile, Officer Joe listened closely. Things were getting bad. He knew it was serious if they were getting involved, a young girl. She smoked a cigarette, watching the screen while Mo grabbed his tool. He used a screwdriver, hoping his plan would face no setbacks. Nearby, Lo Dong flicked his lighter, asking if he was ready to talk. Beaten and bloody, the victim weakly whimpered that he knew absolutely nothing. Dong pulled out his phone, shoving a photo in his face for answers. He wanted to know who drugged the boss's daughter. The man sobbed. He wept, claiming he had no idea back then. Dong just crouched down. He coldly suggested the man start praying so God might show some mercy. He pinned his hand down, then he drove a knife straight through. He whispered about counting from 1 to 5. Inside lay 6 severed fingers. Fingers, a henchman asked what they should do with the guy, but the young leader declared that the sin of lust deserved death by fire, meaning they should toss him right into the boiler. The subordinates immediately threw his body inside. Then they slammed it shut. One goon muttered that the boiler was old and might explode, but the other told him to shut up. Luo was waiting for them. But suddenly, the guy standing near the boiler realized something was horribly wrong. A massive explosion ripped through the apartment. His buddy desperately grabbed his arms while his partner cursed, trying to shield himself as a massive shadow loomed over. The spinning screwdriver slowed to a stop. Mo proudly declared his plant cultivation. Setup was finally complete, with his massive stockpile of supplies, even if he did not step outside, he could easily survive for quite a while. Still, it was not enough. Because those supplies would eventually empty out, true self-sufficiency was the real goal. He wanted to build the ultimate self-sustaining survival chamber. Checking his phone, he noticed that this bizarre freezing event had been active for nearly an hour. He had to move fast because there was no time to waste. Right now, efficiency was everything. In a brutal world like this, time literally meant survival. Suddenly, a sharp knock rattled his front door, making him wonder who it could possibly be. Opening the door, a strange wave of familiarity washed over him. Officer Joe politely apologized to Mr. Mo for the disruption. Mo asked the veteran cop what was going on. Joe explained that the building heating system had completely failed as the temperatures dropped, so he was making the rounds, warning everyone. Hearing this, Mo suddenly remembered a critical incident from last week. Back then, the repair was delayed, and by the time anyone checked, it was broken. Beyond saving, he could not let history repeat itself. This time he had. To fix the issue, Mo volunteered to take a look and closed his door. Heading up the stairs, the confused officers asked where he was going, so Mo questioned if the boiler room was located there. Joe clarified that the boiler was actually in the basement. They had to go downstairs. Mo realized that a basement boiler room was highly illegal here. Fang had explicitly mentioned it was on the top floor. He wondered if his memory was failing. Shivering as they entered the dark basement, Joe complained about the freezing chill. Suddenly, Mo spotted strange smoke rising. Oddly enough, it felt ice cold. Joe pointed him toward the boiler. Mo quickly tinkered with the valves and declared it fixed, but as he pulled back, he spotted a strange blue slime on his fingers. What was this? The other officer asked if everything was all right, but suddenly too pale. Creatures lunged. They crushed his head instantly, screeching about fingers growing back. Mo stared in absolute shock. Was this highly dangerous monster a white armor? Beside him, Joe completely lost his mind, screaming in terror at the monstrous sight. Frozen by sheer fear, Joe could not move. As the creature lunged, Mo instantly triggered his powers. He leaped forward, shoving the cop out of danger. Saving his life by a hair, Mo scrambled back, realizing the cop almost died. That was way too close. Spotting the exit door still wide open, Mo decided to make a run for it. Full speed might save him, but the beast was already breathing down his neck with its massive jaws wide open. How could it moved so incredibly fast? Claws narrowly missed him as he braced for the next strike. Lin Mo wonders if this sluggishness is because he is carrying old Joe right now. So he lifts him, apologizing silently because he has to launch him toward safety. With a massive heave, he launches the old man through the open doorway. Joe screams in confusion, crashing outside and getting knocked out cold immediately. Lin Mo spins back to face the white armor, but the beast headbutts. The exhausted kid barely dodges, while the monster just keeps muttering the word finger. Is his power somehow bound to the unconscious old man? He needs answers, fast. How does this bizarre power actually work? Without Joe, his speed spikes like crazy, but his core abilities are capped. A major limit, the beast charges again, but Lin Mo blocks the blow. This state has nothing to do with you, he growls, holding his ground. Throwing Joe definitely triggered something. It was a weird flare of energy. There has to be a connection, a physical link between the two of them. Then he looks down at the loose gravel. Suddenly, he gets it. In his past life, humanity stood zero chance. These white armors meant death. Running was the only option back then. Today, it is a different story. He is the hunter now, not the prey. Lin Mo grabs a sharp stone. Forget running, trust me, you do not want to miss his next move. He winds up in a baseball stance, channeling all his energy inside it. He launches the stone right at the beast. His theory was absolutely correct. His kinetic power only triggers on targets already coded in his energy. Kinetic acceleration amplifies the strike, scaling up to a terrifying level. Even a small pebble at this velocity hits with the force of a railgun. A massive explosion, bright blue blood splatters all over the wet dirt. But the blood is dripping from Lin Mo's own eye. What is happening? His blood is bright blue. Before he can process this, his knees buckle. He collapses, vomiting blue blood, paralyzed, slipping into a dark coma. Everything is so cold. Right before the darkness takes him, someone runs over. Old Joe cradles him, shouting Lin Mo's name and begging him to wake. Wake up, he pleads. Inside, Joe's wife panics about the freezing storm. The wind is howling. Moving him to a hospital now is completely impossible. The boys fight to keep the door shut, while Joe barks out commands. Turn on the heat, he orders. As his wife warns, he looks poisoned. Stay awake, they scream. Elsewhere, an officer finally tracks down Mrs. Fang. She cuts off his report immediately, demanding that he go find Dr. Shio. Shio arrives quickly, politely asking Joe to step aside and let her work. He is tough, Joe mutters, stepping back while the doctor examines him. She tells the officer to check the messy stairwell. It is a disaster. Amazingly, even with a freezing body temperature, the boy is still breathing. Is he cryogenic? She quickly begins recording her official medical notes. The patient shows signs of severe poisoning and remains in a deep coma. His vitals are highly abnormal, with a body temperature hovering around 10 degrees. Yet his pulse and reflexes are stable. She switches off her recorder. This is unbelievable. Suddenly, the blood separation machine finishes its cycle. She pulls up the analysis and freezes at a sight she has never seen before. She had never seen this before. The blood looked completely normal. But afterwards, strange blue impurities separated out completely. Since the analysis would take time, she had to keep observing his physical symptoms. At first glance, his body markings just looked like normal veins. But up close, they actually resembled a weird allergic reaction. Suddenly, Lin Mo opened his eyes as the doctor watched him. The doctor asked if he was finally awake as he struggled to understand. She quickly warned him not to run around like a headless chicken. Lin Mo demanded to know her identity. Dr. Zhou lit a cigarette, telling him her deal. She was just an unlicensed doctor who could not reveal her real name. He could call her Dr. Zhou before she asked how he got this way. Frankly, she had never seen these symptoms. She wanted to know about the basement. She was incredibly fascinated by him and his strange secrets. Meanwhile, outside in Brooklyn, the temperature had dropped to 29 degrees Celsius. The record for lowest human body temperature was 13.7 degrees. While humans can tolerate 0 degrees, prolonged exposure freezes tissue completely. Temperatures below 32 cause hypothermia. No one survives 29 degrees. After explaining this, Dr. Zhou removed the thermometer from Lin Mo's mouth. She took the thermometer from Lin Mo's mouth, telling him to look. His current temperature was 11.5 degrees. Honestly, how is he still breathing? Lin Mo could only wonder how this was possible. Was it his ability? Of his ability, but there was no time to dwell on it. He had to act. Dr. Zhou smirked, saying she understood, but as Lin Mo tried to leave, he slipped on the wet floor, falling hard. Dr. Zhou turned around, highly annoyed. She had ordered him to stay still because his body was too weak. But that was not the real issue. She had figured him out. She asked him flat out if he had a superpower, shocking the boy. How did she know? He had absolutely no time to waste on her. He scoffed, asking what kind of joke this was, but she stayed serious. Dr. Zhou explained she had been observing him purely as a medical doctor. Lin Mo figured if his ability stayed active, he could escape much faster. But then blue blood dripped onto the floor. Dr. Zhou asked if he was okay. He coughed up blood violently. He realized he could not accelerate now. He knew what was coming next. Meanwhile, Lu Delong walked toward a door. He warned his men that they needed to behave in front of Dr. Zhou. His crew nodded. Moments later, he stopped outside apartment 509. Inside, Lin Mo was startled, instantly wondering what was about to happen next. Dr. Zhou gritted her teeth and urgently ordered him to get up right now. He needed to move, so she grabbed his hand. Lin Mo sat up, confused. But Dr. Zhou ordered him to lie back down immediately. No more questions. He desperately needed to understand why things were turning south so fast. Dr. Zhou warned him that if he wanted to survive, he must obey her. As she said, telling him to stay completely still, then she pressed the button to open the door. Lu Delong stepped inside. He apologized for the intrusion, but Dr. Zhou coldly demanded his business. Lu Dong asks if he can come in for a quick chat, and Zhou tells him to do as he pleases. Once inside, Zhou asks what he wants, and Dong explains. He heard that the resident of apartment 409 was receiving medical treatment. He wants to discuss something, but Zhou replies that the specific person he is currently searching for has already died from poisoning, and Dong just sighs, saying how unfortunate that is. Lin Mo recognizes Lu Dong's voice and wonders why the gangster has appeared here. In his previous life, he had been completely frozen before ever meeting this dangerous man. If he could use his acceleration ability now, he would take Dong's life himself. But the gangster senses something strange in the room and turns around. He says Dr. Zhou has been working incredibly hard, but he just saw the patient blink. He wants to make sure the guy is dead and offers to check. But Zhou stands her ground, calmly insisting that she has already told him the truth. Dong clicks his lighter, saying she has saved many of his boys. The doctor has saved so many of his brothers on the street, leaving him deeply indebted. He says it is his fault, and she really should not be so upset. But she must not forget who is actually keeping this clinic and her safe from harm. Demanding a fast answer, the dangerous gangster finally turns and leaves the apartment. He tells her to think it over, leaving Zhou to complain about his sheer nonsense. She tells Lin Mo to get up now that Dong is gone, knowing he has questions. Lin Mo asks why Dong wanted him dead this time, without any past reason. Unlike his previous life, there is no motive, and he wonders why Joe protected him. But first, he asks the doctor where his clothes are, which surprises her. She wonders if that is truly his first question, as the world drops to -40 degrees. Outside, one of Dong's henchmen remembers watching his father tend to a furnace. Back then, he swore he would never be a loser like him, but now he actually admires him. His partner jokes that he is only being dramatic because of the messed up weather. Dong interrupts, asking if they seriously believe things are going to get any better. The nervous subordinate quickly apologizes, but the grim reality remains. Dong points out that the government used to broadcast emergency messages every 20 minutes. Now even the internet has gone completely dark, as if the world has given up. This sudden cold wave must be God's punishment. Tied up nearby, Joe asks why God does not punish a real sinner like Dong instead, but the gangster simply smiles. He claims he is only managing the building, keeping their little community harmonious. But the officer spits back, pointing out that Dong forced everyone out for supplies. Anyone who refuses to pay his steep price gets their heating cut off. Dong asks if that is not a perfectly fair deal, but Joe calls him a parasite. Dong shrugs it off, lamenting that it is a shame Lin Mo is not here. His twisted words leave Joe completely shocked by his utter lack of humanity. Back in the clinic, Joe asks if Lin Mo is dressed and tells him to come over. But the weak young man is struggling just to pull on his clothes. He asks what she needs, and the doctor asks if he knows how long he slept. The young man guesses about 6 hours, but her response chills him to the bone. 6 whole days, honestly, who wouldn't be completely shocked by that news? She explains that while he slept, Lu Dong seized control of the heating. He forced the freezing residents to trade their precious supplies just to stay warm. Being forced outside was basically suicide back then, since the conditions were that bad. Heading outside meant heaven to them anyway. Lin Mo curses under his breath. He calls Dong a literal beast who would never change. Then he asks about recovering his own body. Is there any way to recover his body? Joe just smiles, her cigarette dangling lazily. She says yes, but telling him comes with a very serious condition. She runs an underground clinic, after all, and she never does charity. So will he accept her deal? Lin Mo asks what this condition actually is. He is willing to do absolutely anything to fix himself. Suddenly, she grabs him by the chin. She tells him he has to become her personal research subject, only she gets to study him. She promises no harm will come to him, she is just fascinated. Since she is so highly interested in him, Lin Mo just grins and accepts the terms. With the deal done, the doctor explains his condition. He has a strange blood type. There is an unknown substance inside him that she has never seen before. But it clearly absorbs thermal radiation and converts it into raw physical energy. However, absorbing too much heat is exactly what made his entire body freeze over. Basically, his body acts like a giant storage battery. Right now, he is just incredibly hungry. So all he needs is food to recover, the doctor nods. But the amount of food he requires is massive, and her small clinic has almost nothing. Lin Mo tells her not to worry, he's going to handle the food situation himself. He sneaks up the emergency stairs toward his apartment, glad he prepared for this. He had already planned a quick run to the local supermarket to restock on supplies. Avoiding Dong's guards is crucial. Reaching his door safely is the ultimate goal. Finally, he unlocks apartment 409, but inside, everything is completely frozen solid. He presses his key button, only to find the entire room completely frozen. Lin Mo wonders if they shut off his heating. This kind of cold could kill someone. Thanks to Dong's interference, his apartment has basically turned into a giant igloo. So he cracks open a storage box containing his highest calorie survival food. Stacks of high-energy chocolate bars. He remembers Ming Ming and plans to buy a different brand next time. Then he tears open a bar and bites down with all his remaining strength. But nothing happens. It seems a single bar is nowhere near enough to feed this beast. He needs to increase the dosage quickly, so he does. He shoves chocolate down his throat, feeling a deep, insatiable craving for heat. Honestly, this hunger feels absolutely terrifying. He is right on the edge of snapping. Just as he is losing control, Dong's henchmen barge right through the unlocked door. They wonder why it was unlocked when they literally planned to chop his fingers off. But now they are inside, staring at mountains of survival supplies ripe for the taking. In the corner, Lin Mo smirks as he swallows his very last piece of chocolate. The thugs draw their weapons, demanding to know who he is. Meanwhile, back at her lab, Joe analyzes the final simulation report to understand what is truly happening to him. She realizes the massive energy reversal is directly affecting his neural activity. This is bad. If his glycogen levels replenish too fast, he will change. He will become a different person. Back in the room, a henchman yells out. He screams that everything in this apartment belongs to them now, but Lin Mo is already changing. His cold blue energy suddenly erupts into red rage as madness takes over. 72 hours. Earlier, Joe had entered the local boiler room, demanding to know what happened there. Turned room 409 into this. On the floor, a strange substance begins to form. Eager to find out what it is, she collects a sample, calling it interesting. But then she spots a security camera pointing directly at the area. She realizes she will have to head down to the security room to uncover the truth. Over the intercom, a man starts an announcement telling all residents to listen up. Strict rationing is now required to prevent waste. Luo Dong's henchmen grab Joe by the arms, complaining that he is too heavy. His partner reminds him to remember the boss's orders and keep watching the boiler. Luo Dong demands a small payment from everyone. They must compensate him for heating. A drunk man asks if this is a joke. He wonders if Joe is messing with them, but his buddy says it does not sound like him. Gangster then speaks up to make everyone realize the seriousness of the situation. Walking to the heating switch, he declares he will turn it off. He wants to conserve resources. Wearing a maniacal grin, he shuts down the system. Suddenly, Lin Mo wakes up facing a mysterious man who asks if he harbors any hatred. Dressed like a prisoner, Lin Mo asks what exactly he is supposed to hate. The figure asks if he hates Luo Dong, repeating the name. Lin Mo says it is obvious. He grabs one of the henchmen by the neck, his intense energy beginning to flare. A sinister red aura surrounds the henchman, and Lin Mo's eyes turn the same shade. Hallucinating, he mistakes the henchman for Luo Dong, muttering that human flesh tastes like beef. With insane strength, he hurls the man away, sending him crashing out of the building. The henchman plummets to the cold ground below, engulfed in blazing red energy. Onlookers outside are frozen in horror, staring at the charred body on the pavement. They murmur that the poor guy must have fallen from the 4th floor. His partner demands to know what just happened and what kind of monster Lin Mo is. Staring at the aura, he wonders if he is facing an alien. He asks if it is some red aurora, quickly realizing he cannot win this fight. Still, he rushes forward, desperate to do some damage, but the hooded figure only smiles. Seeing Luo Dong's face superimposed on the henchman, Lin Mo taps into his speed. He vanishes, instantly reappearing behind the boy with terrifying speed. Lin Mo taunts him to attack. Aggravated, the henchman swings wild, but only hits empty air. Striking again, he is shocked as Lin Mo appears behind him yet again. Still picturing his mortal enemy, Luo Dong, the hooded figure tells him not to move. He pulls his hand back to strike as the desperate henchman charges blindly at him. Activating his eye power, he dashes forward and slices the man clean in half. The door flies open. Mingaming yells his name. He looks up to find Mingaming pointing a gun right at his chest. She fires a dart directly into his stomach. Gasping, Lin Mo asks why she did it. Joe calls out that it is only insulin, causing Lin Mo's crimson aura to fade. As he collapses into her arms, the doctor explains it will neutralize his body heat. But she looks around in absolute shock. Every single plant in the room has bloomed. She desperately wants to know what happened here. Hunger drives humanity to terrible atrocities. It forces cannibalism and endless wars, cycles that repeat throughout our history. Advanced farming tech finally allowed society to stabilize. Yet hunger never truly vanished. In this frozen, dying world it returns. In this world, cultivating crops is nearly impossible, and history is repeating. But there is an exception, like Lin Mo sleeping peacefully among the lush, mysterious plants. Joe notes he just woke up and definitely needs to get more rest. Though she apologizes, she urgently wants to know what all of this is. Reaching out, she picks up a fresh tomato with both hands and immediately takes a huge bite. Analyzing the rich flavor, the doctor admits that the taste is actually incredible. Plus, there is easily enough food here to feed their entire building. Meanwhile, two desperate survivors slowly trek through the freezing snow when her stomach suddenly growls extremely loudly. She is utterly embarrassed. Her husband asks if she can keep pushing forward. But she insists she will be fine, hoping to help her partner. He quickly searches his thick winter coat, suddenly remembering a chocolate bar he saved for her. politely declines, but he explains how he barely managed to keep it from Dong. His wife quickly stops him from searching his pockets and gently reminds him of the truth. Did he already forget that they happily gave that sweet treat to their daughter this morning? He turns around completely stunned, then laughs off his own stupid, completely empty-headed forgetfulness. He's useless, then a massive, terrifying claw breaches the freezing cold air. It strikes with brutal, bone-shattering force, instantly turning his head into a bloody mess. His terrified wife stands frozen in absolute horror at the nightmare before her. A terrifying white-armored beast grips her dead husband tightly, greedily swallowing his entire body whole. Warm blood splatters across her pale face as the creature grins at her. The creature looms over her, laughing that she looks incredibly delicious to eat right now. As she whimpers in confusion, a loud blonde man yells for her to move. She wakes up, turning quickly. She runs desperately to escape. The brave blonde guides her toward safety, screaming at her to run if she wants to live. But the armored beast is too fast, lunging forward with its razor-sharp claws. Looking back in sheer panic, she trips over the heavy snow and tumbles. She crashes hard onto the frozen ground, desperately scrambling to her feet as it pursues. With the beast closing in, the blonde quickly preps a crude fire bomb. Quickly lighting the alcohol-soaked rag, he hurls the crude fire bomb directly at the monster. It strikes with a fiery blast, sending hot sparks flying everywhere. Engulfed in a massive, blazing inferno, the screaming creature shrieks that it absolutely hates the heat. He's gone. This gives her a split second to bolt toward a nearby building. Praying the monster finally lost her trail, she desperately spots an elevator that might save her life. But the persistent monster is right behind her, completely crushing her remaining hopes of survival. Sobbing hysterically, she slams her hand onto the elevator call button. As she panics, the armored beast slowly advances, mocking her terror. She desperately screams at the heavy elevator doors to hurry, but the blonde suddenly cuts in. "Close your eyes," he shouts, catching her completely off guard. Blinding flashbang lights erupt, forcing the howling beast to cover its eyes. As the monster howls, our legendary savior raises his hand while holding a single guitar pick. Ready to unleash a heavy metal storm, he positions his fingers. Strumming his guitar with incredible speed, devastating sonic shockwaves blast directly through the dark corridor. The beast writhes. Our saved, shivering survivor is Dorothy Perez. Her childhood dream was to wear a white coat as a doctor. Instead, she became a nurse, though the demanding job left her miserable. She lost everything, but then she met Matt, who quietly shared his food with her. She felt so lucky just to be near him. Soon, they were married. Their sweet little girl was born, and they even bought a new place. She always knew deep down that this peaceful life could shatter instantly. Whether by freezing cold or brutal bandits, fear always lingered. Now she just wants answers. Who is this strange savior standing before her? The guy literally just fought off a terrifying monster using nothing but a guitar. Honestly, it is completely insane. The guitarist finishes his song, raising a hand high. The beast lunges forward, screaming that his annoying music needs to stop right now. But panting from the performance, the man calmly steps on a hidden floor button. Instantly, heavy steel rods drop from the ceiling, shooting straight down. They impale the creature, catching it completely off guard and trapping it. The armored beast is pinned in the rubble, its claws trembling weakly. Dorothy looks on in sheer disbelief, asking if it is finally over. She collapses to the cold ground, sobbing with relief that the nightmare is done. Still, she watches carefully, completely drained by the chaos. The blonde man reaches out his hand, assuring her that she is safe. Later, Dorothy sits by a crackling campfire, utterly lost in her thoughts. She stares at a family photo, her late husband's face stained with blood. Corbin hands her a clean cloth, gently telling her to let him rest. Sitting beside her, he softly reminds her that life must go on. "We have to keep moving and protect the living," he gently tells her. Dorothy stares at him, her expression a mix of confusion and sorrow. He lights a cigarette, offering a quiet nod to ease the tension. She introduces herself, and the blonde man stammers back his own name. "Just call me Corbin," he says, as she quietly thanks him. He accepts her thanks before she asks if he is also searching for supplies. Corbin sighs, explaining that his situation is actually a bit complicated. He opens up his guitar case, wanting to show her something inside. He traveled all the way from Seattle, looking for an old friend. But right after arriving, this massive freezing wave trapped him in the city. He hands over a picture, pointing out his buddy in the hat from high school. Dorothy instantly recognizes the face in the photograph as Lin Mo. "That is the guy from apartment 409, she says, right as a roar shakes the ground. Corbin jumps to his feet, demanding to know what is causing the tremor. He looks out in terror, asking what those monstrous white things are. An armored giant stomps past, while another reveals a freshly slashed throat. A third beast has horrifyingly long arms, leading an entire pale army. Dorothy realizes with horror that the horde is marching straight forward. They are heading right for the apartments, just as Lin Mo slowly wakes up. He gasps, finding himself staring directly at a cold, lifeless female body. As he panics, Joe steps out from behind his chair, asking if he is awake. She mentions attaching something to his neck, sending a wave of panic through him. The young man tries to move, but he is completely restrained in his seat. Joe smiles, revealing a heavy metal collar locked tight around his neck. Collars are ancient ornamental pieces, and their meaning around the neck has shifted over time. In the past, they symbolize slavery, representing total control and ownership. Today, they can even be adult toys, but Joe reassures Lin Mo that his collar is definitely not meant for those purposes. He objects. Lin Mo would never think that way if she had kept quiet. He agreed to be her research subject, but not like this. The doctor quickly explains that the collar is actually a special monitoring device. She asks if he remembers the strange things inside his body that help him absorb and store high amounts of heat energy. But wait, there is another hidden function to this collar. Once his blood sugar levels spike, a new state will activate, turning the collar from blue to red. Lin Mo nervously asks her what she means by a second state. In response, the doctor asks if he remembers what happened 20 minutes ago. Lin Mo is blank space. He realizes he cannot remember a single thing. Joe places a finger on his cheek, telling him there is no need to worry. She is right there to figure out the truth behind his condition. It is all part of her research. Still, Lin Mo suspects this woman holds some strange power over him. He needs to uncover her secrets. You just know he is plotting to turn the tables on her. Instantly, a keyboard tap. Joe injects fluid into his veins. Lin Mo glances to his side and spots a hanging intravenous bag. He squints to read the label. It is a 25% glucose solution. The doctor watches closely, ready to document the impending reaction. While Lin Mo demands answers, Joe just smiles and says she forgot one thing. Joe slowly kneels in front of him. Lin Mo tenses up in sudden panic, asking what she is doing as she places a small plant right between his legs. Talk about an unexpected twist. As he stares at the leaves, his eyes burn a brilliant crimson. Power explodes, glowing red energy rapidly and violently floods every corner of the room. He roars in anger. The doctor tricked him, but then a voice speaks. His double steps out. He smiles, calling this whole situation interesting. The clone walks closer and touches the plant, causing it to sprout ripe tomatoes in seconds. The clone turns, asking if Lin Mo can finally see him. Lin Mo is utterly baffled, but his double simply welcomes him back very warmly. Lin Mo wonders if this is a hallucination and tries calling for Joe. It is completely true. The doctor cannot hear a single word he says. Lin Mo shouts out loud to test this theory, but Joe does not react at. No reaction from her. Shocked, Lin Mo asks if this is actually that creature's doing. Double replies cryptically, saying it is, but only to a certain extent. Annoyed, Lin Mo demands to know his true identity beyond the looks. The entity explains they are one, united in a shared existence. Neither could have achieved this immense power alone. He lowers his hood, stating that his face should reveal everything he needs to know. Stunned, Lin Mo stares directly into his clone's striking blue eyes. He claims this is the parasite from the cave, and the creature actually confirms it. It reveals the mark on Lin Mo's back, explaining that his rapid healing and resurrection powers were all it's doing. Shifting into a woman, she tells them to play nice. Meanwhile, the National Security and Logistics Bureau stands as an independent powerhouse, better known as ASLN. It is one of the few departments with full autonomy. Under its umbrella, ASLN maintains an elite medical team, brilliant administrative staff, and even its own dedicated military units. To many, this agency is the absolute last line of defense for humanity. Inside, a voice calls out to Xiaolu, demanding to know if the network is back online yet. On her desk sits a photograph of herself and Joe. Xiaolu replies that Miss Barbara has asked that exact question 28 times. The past 2 days, Barbara sighs staring at the photo. Xiaolu tries to blame a hardware failure, but Barbara cuts her off with a sharp shout. She already gets it. Dr. Ripley is a level 4 biochemistry leader, and she honestly believes they are all just passing the buck around. She demands to know if the report is finished, and Xiaolu says it is nearly done. That is close enough, hand it over right now. Her subordinate hesitates, wondering what they should do with the rest. Stressed out, Barbara scoffs that the bald boss never reads them anyway. Things are moving far too fast. She cracks open a classified document. She fears history is repeating itself. Speak of the devil, her bald boss storms in complaining about the bad timing. Frank Kordick, a level 2 minister, rants about the severe climate shifts and devastating cyber attacks. Communication is totally dead, and frontline teams are completely silent. They have been dark for 48 hours, and backup units are still unassigned. They are in deep trouble and must act immediately, he proudly starts, rambling about war never changing, but Barbara interrupts him with a swift, brutal kick right to his groin. He should not be playing politician today. Down in the observation room, she asks if he finally understands the gravity of their situation. Frank stares, completely stunned, as she explains that this armored, pale creature was captured right outside their bunker. The beast is basically a hollow shell. Xiaolu points out it was actually a mutated human. Frank doubts it, but Barbara tells him to look closer at its throat. The bald minister squints, spotting a heavy tactical collar around the neck, recognizing it from the Field Operations Division. He demands answers, and Barbara reveals that this nightmare started before the system collapsed. They picked up a beacon from an operative near the compound, but by the time recovery teams arrived, he was already dead. His call sign was Silver Hammer. Just 24 hours later, his corpse transformed into the monstrous creature standing before them now. Xiaolu adds that CIA intel shows these specimens were active even before the global deep freeze struck. This surveillance clip is from that same supermarket, capturing the very first entities they have classified as husks. A photograph of Lin Mo flashes on the screen. He is the prime subject, designated as specimen number 0, the boy who survived it all. What is going on here? Just a second ago, the parasite was a mere insect. But now, she has suddenly transformed into a woman he finds pretty beautiful. She smiles. Humans get pretty shy seeing the opposite sex completely naked, she says. She slides right onto his lap. Is this just some kind of crazy illusion? Everything around him seems completely frozen, as if time itself has suddenly stopped. You can think of it that way, she whispers. Lin Mo is completely startled. Can she actually hear his thoughts? The parasite simply smiles. Yes, she absolutely can. After all, they are now completely fused together. That is a weird explanation. She notes he only sees her because of Joe's sugar. So it is an illusion. He asks if the parasite is finally active. Twirling her hair in her hand, she says that, strictly speaking, it was his blood. His blood is the exact key that granted Lin Mo his brand new abilities. Why my body? Lin Mo demands to know why she is parasitizing him. She calls him a curious creature. She is completely different from humans after all. She does not belong to this dimension. Lin Mo repeats her words, completely shocked. She explains that her kind must parasitize the bodies of local natives. Only then can they truly gain the ability to understand this alien dimension. Lin Mo complains that this sounds like a pretty cheap romance novel plot. The parasite says her race has no name, traveling endlessly between dimensions. They cannot perceive time or interfere, needing hosts to break dimensional barriers. She admits it must be pretty hard for a human to understand this concept. They want to hear their names and see castles built over time, yet they cannot. Since they cannot interfere with the world, how can they prove they even exist? Lin Mo asks if this is some deep existential philosophy she is preaching. Because from the way she talks, she sounds quite lonely, surprising the parasite. She suddenly bursts into laughter, asking if he actually feels sorry for her. She wonders if this is empathy. Perhaps choosing humans as hosts was correct. Embracing him tightly, she tells him that his current expression is actually quite cute. But there is bad news. From the exact moment they fused, everything changed. Lin Mo is now a prime target for the terrifying creatures known as husks. Armored beasts advance toward the building, gathering like a pack of wolves. Their leader growls. There is food here, but also a dangerous enemy. Move in, the creatures crash violently through the walls of the structure. You can bet he is terrified. What even are these husks? She replies he will find out soon, but he can seek her out if needed. He knows how to call her now. She claps her hands and time resumes. Normal flow returns. Nearby, a small vial drops toward the cold ground. A severed head lands right beside it. A terrified girl runs for her life. She flees down a corridor littered with bodies from the sudden, brutal attack. Panicked residents rush down the stairs, but one poor man is completely cornered. He desperately bangs on a locked door. Help, he screams in terror. The beasts close in, trapped at the worst possible moment. They brutally pierce his body. Meanwhile, Luo Dong's men prepare for the worst. They had been guarding Officer Zhou, but now they must fight for survival. As the beasts invade, they yell out, "What the hell are those things?" As the beasts impale the men, they wonder what these nightmare creatures really are. They look exactly like that previous monster. She notices strange red spots on. The creatures wondering if they are draining blood. Fortunately, the beasts have not spotted her yet, so she needs a quick way out, but escape will be tough with no tools to cut the tight rope or sharp edges. So she decides to use an old trick from her younger days, gripping her thumb tightly and popping it out of joint to easily slip out of bindings. Zhou whispers that those childhood injuries are finally proving extremely useful now. Her joints pop out of place easily now. She begins to sneak away quietly while the creatures are distracted. Still, she cannot just run away empty-handed. Zhou knows she must salvage something from this place. She aims to find the vault, which those thieves completely missed. But right then, a terrifying white-armored beast blocks her path. Zhou quietly curses her terrible luck. Meanwhile, the doctor notes that the vegetation is reacting directly to his strange power and growing fast. Lin Mo asks if she can reverse the effect, but she warns him that overusing this unique power will leave his body completely drained and incredibly weak. Since she has enough research data, Lin Mo urges her to act quickly. But a sudden, violent tremor rattles the entire room and quickly interrupts them. Zhou wonders what is causing the noise as the door shakes violently. Terrified, she asks what is going on while Lin Mo braces himself. Suddenly, a terrifying white-armored creature breaks into the room right before their eyes. His parasite whispers in his ear, warning him about the empty shell. He demands to know why she is still standing here, but she quickly silences him, gently telling him to focus, because Zhou is in real danger of losing her life. If he hesitates, the doctor will die. Lin Mo immediately unleashes his power and charges, wondering why every woman in his life is so complicated. He scoops Zhou up into his arms, quickly apologizing for the intrusion. Before dashing away, the monster strikes the empty space where she stood. Lin Mo lands safely back on the solid ground while still holding the startled doctor. He asks if she is all right, but notices her blushing face. She touches his chest, teasingly saying his power is quite thrilling. He helps her to her feet as they both turn to face the monster. Zhou asks what this beast is, and her friend admits he has no idea. He steps forward to protect her, telling Dr. Zhou to stay back. She warns him not to push his limits, but he smiles. He tells her that despite her clumsy moments, she truly helped him. The boy genuinely thanks the doctor for her help because she saved him. She is completely taken aback by his sudden gratitude and questions his timing. Lin Mo readies his stance, saying they can deal with those small things later. He promises to give her a proper thank you once this is over. Just then, several of those white-skinned beasts crawl out to confront him. He grinds his teeth, wondering if they are fighting as a horde. One was easy, but an entire pack might drain his remaining energy. Zhou asks if he is okay, curious to see his full power. He tries to thank her, but Lin Mo tells her she might want to wait on that. Just then, the monsters charge, forcing Lin Mo to face these white-armored beasts head-on. He drops into a combat stance, while Zhou picks up her monitoring tablet. She decides it is the perfect time to test his absolute limits. His glycogen sits at 100% as Lin Mo slips past a lunging beast. Continuous acceleration will only drain his strength before the fight even ends. But he grabs a monster, confident he can manage by using his power selectively. With a massive heave, he flings the beast straight back into its pack. As the pack quickly regroups, Lin Mo realizes these beasts are not entirely brainless. But get this, he is no longer prey, instantly triggering the acceleration in his eye. The moment it activates, the world grinds to a near standstill around him. He can easily read every single movement and anticipate their incoming strikes. Dodging is effortless now, proving he does not even need full-body acceleration. The same rule applies to his counterattacks as he surges forward again. Even completely unarmed, if he can accelerate his fists to extreme speeds, he can unleash a supersonic shockwave to obliterate the target. The explosive force levels the room, and Lin Mo glares at the survivors. He asks if they are finally terrified, while Joe studies the rising data. Though his calorie burn remains high, his overall efficiency has skyrocketed. He has barely depleted 10% of his total energy during this skirmish. A slow smile creeps across her face as she watches her intriguing subject. She calls him her prize test subject, urging him to unleash another blast. Lin Mo grumbles, realizing she has been dissecting his vitals this entire time. The creatures charge once more, and Lin Mo winds up a massive strike. He calls the doctor a complete fraud as he unleashes a devastating blast. Lin Mo exhales heavily, the bulging veins in his neck throbbing with strain. His arm crackles with residual energy, but his glucose level remains at 83%. The doctor walks over, praising him for mastering his newfound abilities so quickly. The exhausted young man simply turns, staring back at her with silent suspicion. She admits she has a few burning questions about his detailed knowledge. Taking a slow drag from her cigarette, she demands he tell her everything. Meanwhile, in the boiler room, a white-armored beast lies in a pool of blood. Trapped beneath the heavy carcass, the unconscious Josh suddenly opens his eyes. He gasps, looking around the dark room as he spots the blood. With a sharp grunt, he wrenches his knife out of the creature's belly. Trying to piece his memories together, he shoves the heavy beast aside. He recalls the brutal struggle, knowing he would be dead without that lever. He steps out, dreading what might happen if his luck runs out next time. Suddenly, a sharp vibration buzzes from the phone tucked inside his pocket. He frowns, wondering how a call could go through with the network down. An unknown number flashes on the screen. He reluctantly answers the call. A voice on the other end greets him warmly as Josh Castillo. The caller asks if he prefers being addressed as Mr. Curved Blade. Back at the lab, Lin Mo answers Joe while hiding his time-traveling secret. He keeps his past death and regression completely to himself as she changes outfits. Joe expected that. She tells him to stop talking and fix her zipper. Lin quickly zips it up as she explains it is an old environmental suit. It is a prototype from her previous job. Lin still finds it weird. He asks about the sudden change. Joe simply tells him to look up. Those pale, creepy monsters have crawled inside the ventilation ducts. They likely broke the system. Did Lin not notice the freezing temperature drop? A noise echoes outside. They rush to the door, finding a little girl. It is just a kid. Lin recognizes her. She is his neighbor. The little girl runs. Lin chases her while the doctor sighs that she hates kids. Lin looks down the hallway and gasps. The entire floor is covered in blood. The little girl points. Joe spots several dead bodies scattered across the floor. They are building residents. Why do they all have fresh gunshot wounds? Lin slowly approaches the child, warning her that the area is too dangerous. But she just points at old Joe, who is lying motionless on the ground. Lin fears he is dead. In his past life, old Joe shared his food. He was a good man, but he ultimately died to a monster. Lin touches his shoulder, whispering that good people never get happy endings. Suddenly, old Joe grabs Lin's hand, giving him an absolute heart attack. He screams in terror. The old man gasps that he is still breathing. He still owes Lin a favor, but the little girl grabs the doctor's hand. She asks if she is a doctor. Her mother said doctors wear red crosses. Since Joe has one on her suit, the girl begs her to help Uncle Joe. Joe stares at the child, silent. Then she sighs and steps closer. She will make an exception this time, treating him completely free of charge. Kneeling down, she asks what happened. Old Joe groans that it is a long story. After escaping the boiler room, his plan was to reach the security office. But the first floor was swarming with monsters, blocking his path. He climbed the emergency stairs, finding other desperate survivors along the way. With monsters coming, they had to keep going up, but then tragedy struck. Luo Dong appeared with a gun, executing survivors as they tried to climb. He shot them in the head, leaving their bodies behind as monster bait. Old Joe demanded to know why, but Luo Dong just smiled coldly. He was sacrificing the weak to buy time, shooting anyone in his way. Aiming his weapon at the girl, he declared that the strong rule the weak. It is the law of God, he sneered, before firing another shot. Old Joe jumped in front of the bullet, taking the hit for her. Luo Dong kept climbing, leaving the old man bleeding out in the dark. The bullet missed his vital organs, but he still lost far too much blood. He desperately needs safety. Lin repeats the name Luo Dong with burning hatred. He steps forward as old Joe weakly asks what he plans to do. Lin looks back, his eyes flashing as he activates his hidden powers. Meanwhile, Luo Dong is still shooting survivors who beg him to stop. But to him, they are just weak meat, destined to be sacrificed. Having fresh corpses scattered around is the perfect way to slow monsters down. Even if this warehouse is falling apart, it is still his safest bet. Inside the building, Lin Mo opens a door hoping to find supplies, but then he notices a dark aura coming down the hallway. Pulling down his hood, Lin Mo mutters that he is facing his enemy once again, calling out to Luo Dong with pure rage. The gangster fires his gun, asking if he was not supposed to be in hell, but Lin Mo easily dodges every single bullet while charging at Luo Dong, landing a devastating kick that severs the gangster's leg, then lunging forward with a claw-like hand to slice off his entire armed limb before grabbing the screaming boss by the skull. The terrified villain asks why he is doing this as Lin Mo drags him toward the balcony because he has not actually done anything to him yet. Lin Mo questions how he can claim innocence after everything, but then he remembers that none of his past trauma has actually occurred in this timeline. Ever since his regression, he only wanted to build a secure sanctuary for himself, avoiding revenge, but seeing this grim reality now. His passive nature was naive, while innocent people paid the ultimate price, leaving him absolutely livid. Though his bowling rage is not just directed at the crying gangster, he is also furious at his own stupidity. Channeling his power, he incinerates Luo Dong's flesh, tossing the burning corpse down to the white-skinned monsters below while declaring that if he has to do this all over again, he will crush his enemies 100 times over. That is the ultimate law of this frozen wasteland. Meanwhile, old Joe and the little girl huddle close to a warm fire. Old Joe mentions that the previous manager used this area as a storage room, which is incredibly lucky given the items left behind. With plenty of supplies remaining, Lin Mo sits quietly in a dark corner, reflecting that his long-awaited vengeance was finally served, though it still feels incredibly hollow inside. The female doctor suddenly snaps him out of it by smacking his head, asking what he is planning. Since she already knew he had beef with that scumbag, having supreme power usually makes anyone reckless, but she admits that Lin Mo's dark gaze is completely different. She thanks him for taking care of that gangster, prompting Lin Mo to ask if she had her own history with Luo Dong. The doctor quietly recalls traumatic memories of the tyrant threatening innocent lives with a gun. The young warrior stands up, reassuring her that the doctor does not need to talk about it if it hurts. For now, they are staying in this warehouse, but since it is just storage, the building heater does not work. Even though the space itself is fully intact, there are severe limitations here. Old Joe is badly injured, and little Maggie is far too young to survive off a simple barrel fire forever, especially with those white-skinned monsters roaming right outside the door. They must immediately fortify their room using whatever scrap metal they can find here, but to get any actual heat going, they will need to venture down to the main power room. Old Joe warns that the building is crawling with monsters, terrified of what might happen if they make a wrong move. Maggie suddenly sneezes loudly in the freezing cold. Lin Mo warns she will get severe hypothermia if they remain passive, and Joe slowly nods, admitting there is really only one way out. Inside a dark garbage chute, heavy footsteps echo. Suddenly, Lin Mo falls out, faceplanting directly onto the dirty floor, while grumbling about navigating a literal trash tunnel of all things, but his annoyance turns to pure shock as he looks ahead, seeing a grotesque pulsating core. He wonders if those pale, white-skin mutations have fully fused with the dead residents to build a massive nest. Suddenly, he hears a bizarre sound nearby, instantly on guard for a deadly white-armored beast, but old Joe suddenly collapsing right on top of him. Flat on the ground, Lin groans that the doctor is pinning him down. She snaps back that she would gladly move if he just took his hand off her. Suddenly, a strange sound echoes, and she quickly gestures for Lin to stay. Dead silent, the creature glances toward the shadows, moving past them without suspecting a thing. Joe asks what that nightmare was, while Lin demands to know why she even came. She explains it takes two to run the power room, and in his battered state, Lin might easily pass out. Suddenly, the beast turns and charges straight toward their hiding spot, slamming into the wall. standing frozen, Lin desperately wonders what kind of fiend this is. It looks nothing like those other white-armored beasts, and he is way too exhausted to fight back. One wrong move means death, according to the doctor. These pale-plated monsters do not actually eat humans. They only harvest their blood, but he cannot help but wonder, where is it all going? Meanwhile, Maggie peers through a window and calls Joe, leaving the old man nearby completely horrified by the sight of white-armored beasts swarming across the entire building. On the ground outside, a woman lies motionless with a horribly swollen stomach. Corbin mutters that she looks dead, and Dorothy hopes she will not attack them anymore. Suddenly, a light flashes from the dark structure, blinking out a signal. It is Morse code. Dorothy looks confused, so Corbin explains how the ancient message system works by spelling out letters and numbers. Up at the window, Joe keeps flashing his light, desperately trying to warn them to turn back. He needs them to understand that this place is a death trap. Corbin translates the message, while Dorothy frantically asks what the warning actually means. Corbin only catches a few words, but tells her they are being urged to get inside. Both run forward, even though Dorothy is clearly hesitating, because Corbin's daughter is in there. Little do they know, Joe desperately wants them to stay away. Back inside the dark nest, Lin realizes they have no choice but to push through this hallway, but another white-armored freak is guarding the doorway. He has to fight. Suddenly, a loud crack echoes from the ceiling above, distracting the beast. Lin and Joe instantly rush past, slipping through into the darkness. Looking down, the doctor quietly points out that the massive veins pulsating on the floor are feeding on the dead. Lin shudders, agreeing that using human bodies to grow a nest is sick. Then, a massive shadow looms behind them. It is another white-armored demon, but skeletal and towering, looking like a terrifying lick. In a sickening move, the monster rips open its own stomach, pulling out bloody guts to shape a massive blade. Raising it to strike, sensing the deadly danger, Lin curses under his breath. He shoves Joe out of the way, throwing his body forward. Creature slashes downward, trying to protect Joe. Lin takes the full force of the blow right on his back. Gasping in pain, he stumbles back, holding onto the doctor. He warns her that this thing is way too fast for them. This white-armored fiend is on a completely different level. Lin clutches his bleeding shoulder, realizing just how outmatched they are. Suddenly, the creature shrieks, its cold eyes locking onto Joe. Lin watches in horror, desperately wondering why the beast is ignoring him to target her. Suddenly, it lunges forward with its flesh-bound blade. Lin barely manages to push Joe aside, taking another brutal cut as blades clash. That white-armored beast moves too fast, making it incredibly hard for Lin to survive. At this relentless pace, both he and Dr. Joe are going to end up dead. He wonders if he is about to die again. Right then, his internal parasite speaks up. She suggests running away, mockingly asking if that is not what humans usually do. After all, he should know by now that this frozen, brutal world offers absolutely zero mercy. Here, death makes everyone equal, so if he simply abandons the doctor, he might actually make it out alive. But Lin refuses to flee. Leaving her behind is a line he will not cross. Doing that would make him no better than Luodong, the very man he despises. He declares that he does not need to throw away his humanity just to stay alive. Surprising the parasite, Lin explains that as part of him, she should understand. Whenever innocent lives are snuffed out right before his eyes, his chest aches. It suffocates him. That raw pain is his humanity, refusing to fade. Just like ancient fossils showing healed bones, proving ancestors never abandoned their injured kin. No abandonment. Now Lin has only one clear path in mind. He is done hesitating. Since he has this monstrous power, he will use it to win. Dark veins bulge across his skin as demonic horns sprout, and his glowing necklace reacts. Veins consume the symbol. Suddenly, the armored monster lunges forward. Brandishing its blade at Dr. Joe, the terrified woman breaks into a cold sweat. Blocked, a blue-armored warrior stands protectively in front of her. Shaken, Joe asks what this thing is. It is Lin, swearing to protect her with this power. He realizes he looks almost identical to the enemy beast, but there is a difference. Clenching his fist, he knows his heart is nothing like that mindless monster. Summoning a wave of energy into his hand, his altered form glows with brilliant blue light. The parasite finds this fascinating, realizing she definitely chose the right host for her power. Now she tells him he is about to experience the true essence of this power. Lin surges forward and unleashes a heavy punch, though the enemy manages to block it. He presses on with a horizontal kick, but the creature swiftly evades. Speed increased, but get this, it is still not enough. As the beast evades, Joe wonders how he is pulling off this impossible feat. He seems to be forming a raw energy barrier over his skin, drawing power straight from the air. She wonders if this frozen, ancient ruin provides him with an infinite source of energy. What exactly is the origin of this power? Meanwhile, Lin focuses entirely on the threat. He pushes aside his thoughts about looking like the enemy as the monster strikes back. Even with this massive power boost, defending against these relentless attacks is a brutal struggle. It is too much, he barely slips past the beast's relentless attacks. Dodging by a hair, he lands a quick graze. As they clash, Lin realizes something. Since he can accelerate his own time, he wonders if he can slow it down. The beast executes a diagonal slash, then suddenly ignores Lin and sprints toward Dr. Joe. No time, Lin focuses all his power straight into his fist. Striking with full force, he stops the lunging monster right in its tracks. It freezes mere centimeters away from Joe's face. Lin knows this is his only shot. Success, now he has to end this battle once and for all. He will finish it in one go, unleashing a flurry of rapid strikes. Tearing across the beast's back, he calls out his signature move, Shadow Fist. A massive explosion erupts, leaving Dr. Joe on the ground, covered in dark blood. Lin reaches out, telling them they have to move because staying here is too dangerous. The thermostat climbs to 26 degrees, and Joe happily announces they actually made it. Maggie cheers at the sudden warmth, immediately asking when she can see her mother. Suddenly, a strange sound echoes from the vent. Joe tenses up, dreading another monster attack. Lin opens the hatch and tells old Joe he is back. The old man smiles, relieved they made it, but the young warrior pauses, sensing trouble. He asks what happened, but Joe tells him to stay calm so his wounds do not reopen. Otherwise, they will have to stitch him up again. Joe mentions hearing a bizarre sound earlier. He suspects a white-skinned beast is crawling inside the ventilation ducts right above them. Lin stares up, reasoning that the noise might just be the old metal pipes settling. He tells old Joe to relax, since those creatures are usually stuck on the lower floors. Not a chance, they are all trapped down below. But guess what? The ceiling vent completely gives way, and someone crashes down. Joe raises his weapon in triumph, while Lin immediately charges up his combat power. He prepares for a blood nest monster, but Maggie suddenly screams out for her mother. Dorothy gasps, what is her little girl doing out here? Meanwhile, Corbin groans loudly about how ridiculously hot it is inside those vents. Maggie explains that a monster attacked, but a brave blonde man fought them off. He shot so many bad guys, and Uncle Joe saved her despite getting hurt. Then Corbin spots Lin and immediately calls him a smelly little brat. Lin freezes. How does this complete stranger know his name? The blonde guy rushes forward, shouting about how much he missed his old buddy. Lin backs away in confusion, but Corbin wraps him in a massive, tearful hug. All the way from Aberdeen, he actually crossed the continent. Fed up, Lin activates his power and punches the guy straight in the face. Yet a strange sense of familiarity washes over him as Corbin whines on the floor. The blonde complains that even his own father never dared to strike him like that. Lin wonders if this guy is another temporal anomaly, though he never had Aberdeen friends. Still, Corbin clings to Lin's arm, rambling about starting an epic new band. He declares they will be legendary musicians, taking over the music world together. Are they actually best friends? Maggie innocently asks, leaving Lin completely speechless. He desperately wants to know who this guy is and how he fits here. Most timeline changes make sense, but this loud blonde stranger is a total mystery. The butterfly effect explains the future, but there is absolutely no reason for Corbin. Realizing he needs answers, Lin dives into his mind to consult the parasite. Pure silence, the entity refuses to say a single word. She always shows up when she wants, but ignores him when he needs her. So selfish, she only appears when it suits her. Joe snaps at them, warning that they do not have time for this nonsense. Lin yells back that he doesn't even know who this weird guy is. Corbin whines, acting hurt, while the doctor steps in to bring them back to reality. They fix the heat, but a much deadlier threat has already arrived. Those white-skinned monsters are merely the offspring of a massive, terrifying mother creature. The active nests in this building are currently sending blood straight to her. If they do not act quickly, the entire structure will be completely assimilated. If the blood nests take over, Lin finishes the thought, explaining they will be forced to face that white-armored beast wielding a gut sword. If that is true, his current strength should handle it, but Joe warns him that it is not that simple. The blue indicator light keeps blinking, and after using Heshaw, it glows even brighter. Lin wonders if Heshaw is that shadowy black form, and if it drains way too much heat. Joe confirms that activating this form burns through massive amounts of heat. Right now, there simply is not enough. Yet he is the only one who can fight those white-armored creatures, and the situation is getting desperate. Mo realizes that to survive and keep protecting everyone, he absolutely needs warmth. Suddenly, he gets a crazy idea, asking the doctor if they happen to have any spare planks. Joe says they do, but demands to know why. Lin suddenly grabs the weapon, asking Joe to lend him that legendary tool. He needs the sacred sword of physics, that crowbar. He does not care about the blood nests outside or the terrifying threat of those mutant white-armored beasts. The core of their problem is actually quite simple. He will use his power to push forward and gather materials. After all, hunger is the best seasoning for those who lack the strength to work, and eating brings power. Joe finally realizes it is a hydroponic farming setup. Lin's logic is pretty wild. Joe asks if he plans to start farming right here, but the young man replies that it is about the value of honest labor and his own unique ability, since more survivors keep joining. Solving the food shortage is their top priority. They all know what hungry people are capable of doing. Joe blows a cloud of smoke in Lin's face, asking for the next move. A hydroponic system will not just sprout food out of thin air. The young man clenches his fists, ready to work. As he walks through the dark building, he notices the bodies have completely vanished, and there is not a single trace of blood. Something is collecting them. It has to be that massive beast. Time is running out fast. The blood nest is creeping toward this floor, and he must move now. Lin wants to use his black form to wipe out the threat completely, but first he must secure warmth and food. Watch what happens next. Corbin interrupts him, calling him a weirdo and asking where he is sneaking off to. Alone, Lin asks how he followed him, but the blonde replies that everyone gets it. Lin ignored him because having such an embarrassing friend is pretty humiliating. Even so, he still understands the guy, and now that he is at a major corporation, a beggar like Lin is looked down on. Lin asks what that has to do with anything. Corbin keeps talking, saying that now they are alone, they can speak freely. The young man just finds him incredibly annoying. The blonde slaps a hand on his shoulder, asking why his brother is acting so silent. Lin simply replies that they are completely screwed, standing face to face with that massive monster inside the blood nest room. Under a bridge, Corbin calls out to Jerry. Since they are pretty similar, both of them were kicked out and can only hide out under this bridge. From now on, he and the rat will depend on each other, but if he does not want to, he does not have to leave. Besides, it is pouring rain. Suddenly, Lin shows up, calling out to him. He knew exactly where his friend would be because whenever he gets kicked out, he always hides here. He asks how many. He remembers the times his father beat him. Corbin asks if he came just to provoke him. Lin questions how he could even say that, but even if they were running away, they could not just hide under some old bridge. If they were going to run, they should escape with style. Corbin asks where he learned those corny lines. Lin just extends his hand, telling Corbin that if they are going to run, doing it with a close friend is the only way to make it stylish. Corbin agrees to go along, only so Lin stops running from his problems. Lin thanks him. Back in the present, Lin suddenly grabs his blonde friend by the collar, yelling at him to run while dragging him along. Corbin complains that this messy escape is not stylish at all. In the distance, Lin notes that the nests have spread up to the 4th floor. They need to head back to secure the seeds, but Corbin keeps complaining. He insists they should be escaping in style, making Lin wonder why he cares now. Who brings that up now? The blonde asks if Lin did not say it first. Lin denies ever saying that. They bicker as Corbin thinks Lin is just playing dumb. Lin keeps denying it, but their petty argument is cut short. An impact shatters the wall as the monster's hand pierces straight through. Lin barely dodges the strike, realizing that they are out of time. Corbin looks on in shock as the beast grabs Lin by the head. With Lin's head about to be crushed, the blonde preps a Molotov cocktail. He draws the beast's gaze and hurls the burning bottle directly at it. He screams to free his brother as the monster blocks the fire. Shielding itself with its hand, it flings Lin away to extinguish the flames. Lin crashes hard into the blood nest. He instantly notices dark veins sliding over him. They are latching onto his body, slowly pulling him deep into the nest's core. He struggles to break free, but the veins wrap tightly around his face and hands. He curses his luck as the nest consumes him, fearing this is the end. Slowly opening his eyes in the darkness, Lin wonders what is happening. He tries to figure out where he is, but notices something strange in the shadows. Tangled within the roots is a mysterious, white-armored humanoid figure. Lin wonders if the entity is still alive when it suddenly snaps its eyes open. It stares directly at him, startling him as his surroundings begin to warp. Lin lands on solid ground, completely disoriented and wondering where he has ended up. A vision flashes before him, showing his childhood self holding hands with Corbin. He recognizes the nosy blonde from Aberdeen, wondering who the kid is talking to. Realizing that the kid is himself, Lin wonders if they were actually childhood friends. But as he questions his memories, his younger self screams out in denial. The boy yells that he was Kurt Cobain's true friend, not Lin's. He calls Lin a music thief. Suddenly, Lin snaps awake, nearly consumed by veins. Kurt grabs his hand, saying that dying like this would be pathetic. Kurt manages to drag Lin out of the grasping veins and asks if he is all right. Lin catches his breath, realizing he almost became monster food, wondering what just happened. But he quickly pushes those thoughts aside, knowing they have no time to waste. They need to figure out how to deal with that giant, fireproof monster. Kurt grabs another Molotov cocktail, declaring that they will need a bigger flame. This is tough. Kurt offers a drink, but Lin interrupts. He says don't rush, white-armored ones burn fast at high temperatures, but this monster absorbs heat to regenerate. Kurt is completely shocked. Lin remains totally calm. It is a rare sight. Kurt throws the Molotov, trying to burn its healing factor. Lin asks if he heard him. The beast does not even bother defending. Against the fire, Lin decides to unleash his black form right now. He cannot leave this thing here, but nothing happens, nothing. He remembers the doctor's warning. He lacks the energy to activate. His black form he cannot fight. Then a thought hits him. The monster felt familiar from the start. Why is that? The doctor said his high-on state absorbs heat too. An idea forms. Suddenly the creature slams the ground with immense power, sending everything flying. Flashback. In his past life, the fortress was attacked, and they prayed for a soul to find peace. Lin Mo notices they had been losing people for a whole month. They constantly moved locations, but the monsters always found them. No matter how much they ran, they had to keep escaping. Lin Mo tells old Joe he has had enough. No more running. Lin Mo refused to flee, now back in the present fight. He realizes he was right. He can absorb environmental energy. The heat from the flames becomes his own raw power. Kurt is shocked to see horns growing as Lin transforms. His Heschel form takes shape. With a pitch-black fist, he punches the giant monster. Kurt shields his eyes from the shockwave. He cannot believe it. Lin just sent that massive beast flying. Lin calls Kurt Corbin, telling him to listen very closely now. The weak friend Kurt knew before has absolutely nothing to do with him now. He is different. Corbin is stunned, saying his friend looks amazing. Where did he get those clothes? The blonde quickly accepts his reality. He cannot view his friend as a monster. Lin smiles, changing the subject. This big guy is going to be tough. He asks Kurt how many Molotovs remain. Kurt opens his guitar case. There are plenty left, but the giant beast is waking up. The punch dazed it, but it stands to face them again. Corbin asks what the plan is. Should they run? Lin hesitates. Seeing flashes of his previous life, will he flee this time? No, running away is boring. He will stand and fight. Corbin looks at him, realizing his friend has truly changed. He calls him Little Black, but the beast is still standing. Its healing factor is strong, but its movements are very slow. Lin leaps onto the monster's head, readying his fist. Time to strike. He punches multiple holes directly into its massive body. Lin jumps back to retreat for a second. Now it is Kurt's turn. Kurt throws every Molotov, unleashing absolute chaos. A massive explosion rips into the monster. The beast's thick fat is highly flammable, so as long as the gash is deep enough, the fire will keep burning it, but it won't take long for the creature to regenerate. To stop this, Lin prepares to strike, while it burns, absorbing the intense heat from the white armor monster's melting fat, and utilizing the enemy's very flesh and blood for his own benefit. His monstrous form sprouts wings from his back, his energy crackling with immense power. Stomping the ground with sheer force, he charges ahead, completely obliterating everything. In his path with a wild burst of energy, Lin digs his foot in to halt. The impact pointing his finger directly at the beast, getting incredibly close to it. He places his finger right on its nose. The built-up kinetic energy causes the entire structure of the massive creature to shatter with just a light touch. Corbin watches from a distance, asking if that was a literal sonic boom. Meanwhile, Lin reflects that completely destroying the entire body makes even the strongest regeneration totally useless. Still, he only pulled it off thanks to Kurt, even if the guy seems pretty suspicious. He was genuinely helpful. Lin helps his clumsy ally stand, asking if he is doing okay while secretly thinking that the guy acts sloppy but is no fool. Kurt questions why Lin is suddenly being so polite, asking if they should head downstairs to fight some more, and honestly, we can't blame Lin for wanting to facepalm. Corbin yells when they enter room 409 of the apartment. He claims he finally gets it now because they were only here to secure seeds and the nutrient solution, asking when his friend ever learned about farming and where he acquired these supplies, not to mention wanting to know when he obtained his powers. Lin just mentally complains about being surrounded by idiots. Even after being reborn, suddenly a voice crackles through the necklace hanging around Lin's neck. Attempting to communicate, the young man is startled while Corbin asks where he got such a cool necklace. Mo tells him to shut up and places his fingers directly on his nose. Corbin yells out that Mo is hurting him and causing a nosebleed, while Joe asks what the two are doing. Lin asks if the device on the necklace is actually for communication. Explaining that he only just managed to reach the apartment room, the doctor announces that she has great news because they uncovered some useful old gear in the warehouse, including vintage radio transmitter. They also uncovered gardening supplies that the housewife likely used to plant flowers. Lin dryly asks if that was the grand news, but the doctor keeps talking because she actually has a personal request for him. At the doctor's clinic, Lin reflects that he can't believe he has finally returned to this specific place. Corbin remarks that even a rundown building like this has a lab, but his friend clarifies that it was just a local clinic, though he was technically right, while searching for the capsule the doctor requested. Corbin spots a massive flask and asks what it could possibly be for because it looks real, suggesting what Kurt said might actually be true. The doctor might not be a real medical doctor. Lin notices a biohazard warning and wonders if she was secretly studying the white armor, deeply questioning who this mysterious doctor truly is. Corbin suddenly turns on the terminal, prompting Lin to slap his friend's head and demand to know what he's doing. Warning him not to mess with someone else's computer, he asks what would happen if he deleted her crucial research files, but Kurt retorts that he isn't a total fool. Lin experiences a sudden realization regarding the stored files, telling Kurt to get lost, calling him a mere lackey, which deeply enrages his companion. Lin tells him to go and gather any useful supplies, but Corbin warns him not to kick his guitar. He sits at the computer, hoping to dig up some vital clues. Finally, Lin pulls up the files, spotting an old photo of a shy young girl. He zeroes in on the ID card around her neck, and piece by piece, Lin realizes the doctor is hiding things. Suddenly, the doors open. Dr. Joe welcomes them back, asking how the run went as Corbin starts explaining that it was a success. Nearby, Lin stands back, watching everyone quietly. Lin explains that he managed to salvage a few seeds from the room. Though access was limited to just a few floors, unfortunately he did not find any food. Old Joe gently tells him it is not his fault, blaming Lou DeLong instead for stealing their supplies. He then asks for help planting, but Lin refuses since the old man is injured. That is when Zoe steps up, offering her knowledge in botany and biochemistry to help with the crops. Lin agrees, keeping a suspicious eye on Dr. Joe. Suddenly, Kurt cuts in, volunteering to help as well, before quickly backing down. Under their cold glares, Lin tells him to go sit with Maggie. Once they are alone, Dr. Joe asks for her flask. Lin pulls out the flask, demanding to know if this is indeed the item. But as she reaches for it, he quickly pulls back and tells her to wait. He is not handing it over until she explains who she really is. Smiling calmly, the doctor asks him if he still has not put the pieces together. Lin studies her expression, instantly wondering if this was all a setup. Did she do this on purpose? Dr. Joe just keeps on smiling. Now you have to wonder, was that capsule just clever bait to lure him in? He demands to know what she is planning, addressing her by her true title. The former biochemical agent, Jo Shuya, smiling, she snatches the flask and tells him he is half right. It is not bait, it is the key to humanity's survival. She asks if he remembers transforming into Hei Shan, pointing out his monstrous resemblance. She is convinced there is a direct link between him and those creatures. And this foreign organ proves it, even now in this dormant state. It still absorbs heat, just like what happens to Lin. Lin demands to know what any of this has to do with survival, or why she exposed her identity. Dr. Jo tells her test subject to relax. They have a massive problem to solve. Whether for food or gathering energy to fight the mother, they need crops. She recalls his hydroponic tank design, realizing he had a brilliant plan. He was intending to use his red limit state to accelerate plant growth. In short, the key to their entire survival rests on Lin reaching that state. But currently, he lacks the raw energy required to trigger it. Even drawing heat from his surroundings is not enough because his system simply lacks the storage capacity to process it all efficiently, but with this new organ integrated, Lin could finally absorb enough energy to break his limits. Lin hesitates, stopping to think as he tries to process this crazy idea. But Dr. Jo does not wait, pressing the cold flask directly against his stomach. To survive, he has to graft this thing inside himself. He asks about the risk of rejection, but black veins suddenly crawl over the glass. Dr. Jo gasps in shock as the pulsating veins form a terrifying face. Lin Mo is just as clueless, wondering if the Black Fury is targeting the white armor. It seems to want a piece of its flesh. Suddenly, the flask shatters on the ground. Jo realizes the young man's body has hit its limit and cannot wait any longer. He enters the red limit state, collapsing as a bizarre creature erupts from his back. The doctor watches, wondering if his massive power actually comes from some parasite. How could such a massive entity fit inside a human? Talk about nightmare fuel. Meanwhile, Lin just smiles in his red limit state. It is finally planting season. The seedlings will grow naturally on these shelves, completely free of green algae. Only a few resources are missing, but a sudden rustle from above catches his ear. Little Maggie reaches out to touch a tiny sprout, asking why it is so small. Lin explains it is a lettuce seedling, which only leaves her even more confused. He gently tells her it is just a baby lettuce, exactly like little Maggie. Maggie pouts, saying that cannot be true since she is clearly way taller. She asks what lettuce even is. Dorothy appears, calling it the green leaf in her burger. Maggie immediately asks if they can get one together once her dad returns home. Dorothy hesitates, trying to find the words, but Kurt suddenly appears right behind Lin. He bluntly blurts out that her father is gone, leaving the young man completely speechless. Lin quickly cuts in to save the mood, turning his attention straight to Corbin. He asks if Corbin brought the wheat seeds so they can finally bake bread. Corbin nods and Lin eagerly asks about tomato and cucumber seeds for the burgers. They turn to little Maggie, asking if she wants one as soon as the lettuce grows. The little girl looks up, curiously asking exactly how long that is going to take. Lin jokingly replies that in ancient Greece, he would basically be the god of agriculture. Under his care, plants grow super fast. Maggie cheers, shouting that this is amazing. Dorothy thanks them, and Lin introduces himself as the guy from apartment 409. Dorothy sighs, noting that they are trapped here, and fast-growing food would save them. If they can just grow crops quickly, they will not have to suffer from hunger. Kurt chimes in, bragging that his friend is incredibly talented and is not joking around. But Lin cuts him off before he can leak anything about his actual secret powers. He drags Kurt away, hushedly warning him to keep his mouth shut about the details. Kurt asks why, but Lin tells him to drop it, suddenly remembering an old warning. Jo once mentioned working on a highly classified fire in the field project back then. The security level was insanely high, and all participating departments were kept completely confidential. Yet she still managed to dig up some highly sensitive information. It was a secret project to plant undercover agents directly among civilians. They used brainwashing, drugs, and hypnosis to create walking human monitors. She had no clue if the security bureau was currently paralyzed or if monitors were nearby. If those secret agents discovered Lin's unique abilities, it would mean instant danger for everyone. If those agents find him, it is game over, so silence is absolutely crucial. Lin sighs, giving Kurt a quick, playful smack on the head to seal the deal. Corbin walks Dorothy away, reassuring her that their resident agriculture god has everything covered. The young man looks around to make sure no one is watching his next move. Confirming he is completely alone, he aims his arm directly at the waiting plants. Closing his eyes, he focuses deeply before activating his powerful red limit state once more. But high above, a hidden security camera captures his every move, broadcasting it directly to a satellite. They ask if communications are finally restored while restarting the system. They connect to the satellite to scan the skies for any anomalies. Total chaos, the area is completely frozen, meaning they must search the ground. They activate their terrestrial equipment to pinpoint the signal. Only 3 drones remain, and the extreme cold drains batteries quickly. Move fast, gather everything before losing them. An employee nervously asks his superior what exactly they are searching for. He replies he wants anything useful, while a woman tells the squad to stay low. Keeping down gives them a real shot at finding survivors or rescuers. The one scout reports back that his side is totally quiet. Wait, hold on, he notices strange veins growing all over the building. The veins hijack the transmission right before the drone is obliterated. The mother creature raises her bleeding hand, shocking the stunned operators. They record everything as the beast tears away the surrounding veins. A giant limb bursts out, shaking the building and rattling Lin's room. Wondering if it is an earthquake, Lin rushes over to Dr. Joe. He asks what is happening, but she urgently tells him to look outside. Talk about nightmares, a massive, single-eyed monster peers right through the glass. Joe whispers that this horrifying beast is what the mother gave birth to. Newborn asks where it is, which somehow triggers Lin's sleeping ability. It searches for its missing head, reaching out with a massive, terrifying arm. Kurt demands answers while strange, crackling energy gathers around the monster's hand. Lightning sparks wildly, prompting Lin to scream for everyone to duck. Brace yourselves, the beast completely obliterates a massive section of the structure. Lin tightly closes his eyes, trying to shield himself from the shockwave. He opens his eyes and pulls Joe close, desperately asking if she is all right. She nods but quickly asks about the test subject as danger looms near. She notices his chest is pounding rapidly from how close they are. Lin suddenly pulls away, glad she is safe but warns her to brace themselves. The creature stares directly at them, while Lin spots floating shards in the air. They hang suspended, making him wonder if it is electricity or magnetism. Suddenly, the child hurls those electrified rocks forward, triggering another explosion. Dorothy barely dodges the collapsing debris while holding Maggie tight. Kurt yells in absolute frustration, hating how completely messed up this is. He screams to check on Lin, but sees only a ruined structure. Kurt curses. Suddenly, a faint voice calls out to him from below. The doctor tells him not to worry, showing she is clinging to a pillar. Kurt quickly pulls her up and asks where Lin is, but she struggles to speak. Before she can explain, the creature launches another terrifying attack on them. Dorothy screams for everyone to run, while Corbin stands frozen in shock. Out of nowhere, a sharp flash of red energy cuts deep into the monster. Direct hit, the massive beast falls backward, crashing heavily into a building. Check out that armor. Lin stands tall, his white suit now sporting glowing red stripes. A remote camera feeds the wreckage back to a silent observer. They wonder if this is truly the monster the rescue team warned them about. It lifts massive stones with its telekinetic power, crushing the very last surviving drone. Everyone watching panics, asking what they should do. Pop steps up to explain. Comms were just re-established, so getting in touch with the bunker will take time. A woman speaks up, saying the bunker team is probably just waiting out there. They had a lot to process in the field, but then a colleague chimes in. Why not start exploring? There might still be survivors out there. Pops refuses. The surface is way too unstable, and waiting is their safest bet. But right then, a massive explosion rips through the active battlefield. Lin emerges from the thick smoke, clad in a brand new, terrifying armor. Sharp energy horns sprout from his head as he realizes he has crossed a line. This power is beyond the red limit, burning like newly awakened embers. He clenches his fist as the monster child hurls a barrage of rocks. Lin takes a deep breath, crouching low before launching himself forward. He shoots off like a rocket, charging directly into the incoming storm. He leaps over the debris, kicking and redirecting the boulders back at his foe. The beast struggles to maintain control. Lin watches, deep in his own thoughts. These embers do not roar, they burn silently like eternal sparks. The monster raises its arm, pulling together massive stones for a final strike. It shapes them into a massive, artificial meteor, launching the heavy attack straight at Lin. As the threat looms closer, Lin knows these quiet sparks will never fade. He channels raw power into his fist. This is just the beginning. A prelude to a massive wildfire, he slams his fist right into the meteor. The impact unleashes a colossal shockwave that rattles the entire neighborhood. Nearby buildings explode as sharp rock fragments pelt the surrounding houses. Even the beast takes a hit. Dorothy gasps, asking what that red thing is. Kurt is ready to explain, but Joe cuts him off, telling him to shut up. Joe asks if it was an angel, leaving the rest of them completely stunned. Sure, he saved them like a divine messenger, but that face looked purely demonic. Lin falls back to the ground as dark wings start wrapping around his waist. He looks at the wreckage, realizing he definitely went way too far this time. The parasite asks why he cares, since he's the only one with this power. Lin glares back, demanding to know if this annoying insect is finally leaving. The parasite is caught off guard, asking if he actually has questions for her. He shoots back that he has plenty of questions he needs answered. She raises her arms, laughing that she is in a great mood thanks to that crazy doctor. Since he fed Lin the core, she is willing to answer his burning questions. Lin demands to know what the white armor really is, ready to ask more. But the parasite gently places a finger on his lips to silence him. She tells him to take it slow, explaining the white armor is just an empty shell. It is a soulless body, completely driven by the obsessions of its past life. Just like Lin is bound now, or rather Mo, who died in that other timeline. Since time is not linear for her, she will simply jump to a new reality if he dies. She will leave his timeline behind and move on to the next. His soul and consciousness would go with her, leaving only a husk behind. Because a soulless version of him would inevitably transform into a mindless beast. Left as an empty shell, while his actual body was likely out there, still fighting. Suddenly, every chaotic battle in his fractured memory finally made perfect sense. The parasite commends him, he caught on fast. Meanwhile, the young man realizes he didn't reincarnate, he has actually been traveling through time itself. Just then the strange child sheds its skin, triggered by the core deep inside. A bright flame ignites on its head. Lin realizes each white armor belongs to a time traveler. Supernatural entities from across time. Nearby, Shallow asks Barbara what they are even searching for. The woman replies that they need to trace the package delivered by that field worker who transformed into a horrific beast. They have to inspect it, though her subordinate objects, calling it high-level evidence. Their boss will be furious. They open the box and freeze. A severed head. Suddenly, the creepy child screams, demanding its missing skull. Unleashing a devastating shockwave from its blazing crown, Lin raises his arms to defend against the searing force, desperately wondering if this immortal nightmare can ever be killed. The parasite calmly notes that it is a unique child, suggesting he ask it directly. Lin wonders why she is suddenly so incredibly talkative, which is highly unusual for her. She cryptically replies that they are all her, and that time is far from linear. Before calling him a total idiot, Lin snaps back, questioning if now is really the best time for a childish argument. Suddenly, the monster lunges forward to attack. Insane speed, Lin barely tracks it as the creature readies another strike. An electromagnetic pulse crackles in its hand, completely blinding him with shock. Barely evaded, the monster is terrifyingly quick, but he can cope. But compared to his own upgraded state, it is still second-rate. The monster slams its hand onto the dirt, hurling heavy boulders directly at Lin, who suddenly feels himself floating. He wonders if gravity itself has gone wild. In that split second, the beast drags him forward, grabbing his neck in a vice-like grip. Lin instantly feels his heat draining rapidly. This is bad. Do they share the same origin? The parasite suddenly manifests, explaining that neither can fully drain the other. Lin groans at her interference. Suddenly, ghostly blue arms sprout from his back. They forcefully rip the monster's grip away, tossing its body a great distance. New armor materializes behind him, boasting a monstrous face but a feminine physique. The parasite decides she has to take charge, given his pathetic physical state. Lin watches her in absolute awe while she scoffs, asking if he really thought she would just watch. No need for shock, she has her ways. Armed with the second core, shaping a new body was simple. Now the beast charges them both, but she warns that this will only disrupt their energy flow. She delivers a brutal kick that clashes directly with the oncoming monster. Declaring she has zero time to waste, the beast counters, channeling its power into its foot. Lin screams a warning about the gravity field, but she tells him to stay calm. Since they can't escape gravity's hold, they will simply ascend instead. She presses her hand against his chest, transferring a surge of pure blue energy. The ground below them shatters instantly, while gravity yanks her downward. The beast lunges with a deadly claw, but a glowing blade suddenly manifests. In her hand, blazing flames erupt on the creature's skull as it barely evades. Her slash, though the blade grazes its shoulder and burns the flesh clean away. Looking through binoculars, a distant watcher spots them and announces they have finally located 13. When her partner asks if she is nearby, the woman confirms she is not too far away. But the chaotic battlefield makes it the wrong time to collect her right now. She has spotted a fascinating guy instead, while the parasite claims this is his true power. Fighting barehanded is a waste. Lin wonders about her other hidden abilities. While the creature rapidly repairs its damaged arm, she suddenly conjures a massive scythe. Mirroring that trick, she readies her weapon. Nearby, a man removes his hat. He never expected the Holy Mother, 13, to be pushed to such extreme limits. His plan was to use the Revelation chaos to steal her abilities and then her head. That would lead them to the agency, but things are spinning out of control. Jumping in now would expose them, and the logistics agency will not halt their operations. The girl quickly agrees with Father Cross, believing they are guided by the Holy Spirit. Guided by divine will, she feels another woman suddenly wrap her arms around Irina from behind. She tells the priest to relax, playfully pressing herself against the young girl's back, reminding him that little Irina has been with the prophetic association since childhood. Taking care of her requires plenty of patience, while Irina protests the sudden touch. The priest sighs and warns them. Jinyu is running incredibly late. The woman explains that shaking off the pests tailing them was a huge pain. Relieved she is safe, the priest gathers everyone to focus on the distant stage. Their grand plan is finally about to unfold, right before their very eyes. The child unleashes a vicious strike with the scythe, generating a pulling force. But the parasite just charges ahead anyway, shouting out to him to follow. Lin remembers how she used that magnetic pulling force to trigger a massive explosion. She's setting up the exact same trap, and he warns his companion to halt. It is a trap. The parasite is caught completely off guard as she closes in. She barely blocks the incoming flurry of attacks with her sword, feeling the sudden pressure. A massive repulsive force blasts her away, and the creature immediately pursues her. Launching from the ground, the beast aims a lethal downward blow right at her. She is terrified but takes the hit, the heavy scythe embedding deep into the earth. Nothing is there. The attacker looks around in search of them. Lin is already holding the parasite safely in his arms, proving his incredible speed. The enemy is fast, but she is still 500 cosmic velocities behind him. Standing back up, the parasite realizes this is the child's specialized, innate ability. This is no ordinary hollow shell, and Lin agrees that he felt the difference. She is on a completely different level compared to the standard white armors. Father Cross notes that her body is filled with a deeply disharmonious soul. That was his immediate impression upon first meeting 13, the divine yet empty child. Her soul and flesh are disconnected, making her far more superhuman than normal armor. She remains a hybrid of both worlds, while Joe reflects on her wild theories, hoping her experimental test subject will not disappoint her in this critical moment. Lin forces himself to stay completely calm and analyze the opponent without panic. Her body parts turned white whenever she released that intense pulling force. Meanwhile, her bronze parts are used to project the powerful repulsion force. Figuring out her secret trick, Lin turns to his companion with a sharp grin. Since she wanted this creature incinerated anyway, it is time to light things up. She repeats the call for more firepower, smiling as she nods. Agreeing to the plan, she tells Lin to stretch out his hand. Lin is stunned. She suddenly pulls his hand to her chest. He asks what she is doing as a crack opens in her skin. A weapon hilt forms inside her body while the child monster charges. The massive blade emerges from her chest, right in time. Before the scythe hits, Lin pulls the greatsword free and blocks. Shocked by his sheer power, she is thrown back by a massive explosion. The beast crashes hard to the ground while Lin stands still. He rests the blade on his shoulder, walking slowly toward her. The parasite analyzes the monster, noting her weak left side. Striking her there will force her to use her defensive push. As the scythe deforms, Lin quickly formulates his combat plan. This is his golden opportunity to guide her attack path. Spreading his wings, he surges forward to strike. He strikes her right side, forcing her to use her pull force. That attraction pull is purely defensive, shifting his trajectory. But get this, that shift is exactly what he wanted. It proves her body follows those flows just like a magnet. Those magnetic currents become his acceleration zones. Adding his own speed creates an incredibly powerful kinetic charge. He pours everything into one final strike, triggering a massive blast. Smoke clears as Lin exhales, leaving the child looking up shocked. His blade has run straight through the beast, impaling her. The parasite swoops down, aiming a final crushing blow. Cross prays, invoking his powerful golden pilgrimage technique. Holy lights transport Arena directly onto the field. Jinwoo asks if the teleportation hurt, but the girl shrugs. She summons her holy coffin just as the parasite strikes. Arena draws her blade, noting the parasite looks like her. Her protective eye shield is secure as she prepares to move. With one clean motion, she draws and slashes the beast. Lin watches her approach, wondering if she is some kind of superhuman. Suddenly, 13 crumbles right before them, and Arena grabs its core. The parasite lunges, but Jinwoo yells a quick warning to look out. Arena spins her blade, deflecting the blow and throwing her back. Lin catches her by the waist as she secures the core. She wants to retreat immediately, but Cross asks her to wait. The priest has her in his sights for a direct recall. He orders her to jump so the ground below does not collapse. Lin can only watch in utter confusion, wondering what she will do. Arena crouches down, muttering about how annoying this situation is. Why would a human save white armor, he demands, but she leaps. Cross tells Jinwoo to catch her, and a woman appears. She cradles Arena safely in her arms, welcoming the girl back. Jinwoo tells Arena not to worry about 13, but the girl just curses under her breath. Blaming Cross, she asks if he wanted to crash into the ground too. He warns her that his teleportation has strict limits. Naturally, Arena is irritated. Furious, she chucks 13's core right at Cross, who knows rebuilding a body takes forever. While Jinwoo keeps teasing Arena, Cross gently asks 13 to rest during this process. Their prophetic leader warned them to act with absolute caution, so they cannot clash now. Still, he really wants to meet the two fighters, who managed to defeat 13. But Lin points out they have already escaped, vanishing into thin air without a trace. And honestly, this entire battlefield is absolutely ruined. Joe coughs, complaining that the thick smoke makes it impossible to see. It looks like this chaotic fight is finally over, but Corbin still demands real answers. The doctor assures them they are safe, though Maggie worries about Lin. Joe calls out for Lin, desperately squinting through the incredibly thick haze to find him. Did he make it out? Suddenly, the young man appears right before them. He asks why everyone is looking down, since he easily climbed from the 3rd floor today. Later in the medical bay, Joe wonders if he took a heavy hit. Surviving that devastating blast seems like an absolute miracle, but Lin just casually shrugs it off. Joe orders him to move his hand so she can examine his potential injuries. But he quietly whispers to her that there is absolutely no need to worry at all. Joe whispers back that a quick checkup won't hurt, they must act natural. Out loud, she remarks that their survival is nothing short of pure luck. But those massive shockwaves shattered the outdoor pipes, completely ruining their vital central heating system. After all that crazy effort, they are right back to square one. Lin tells her not to lose hope just yet, since the situation is not that bad. While climbing up the stairs, he noticed those creepy blood nests have completely vanished. This means they can finally explore the lower floors of the building without any danger. They are the only survivors left, but there is no time to grieve. Scavenging left behind supplies from residents is crucial to block out the freezing wind and rain. He tells Joe not to worry too much because he will handle the relocation prep. But Joe's hands begin to tremble violently as she stares down at her phone screen. The agency wasted absolutely no time. Right then, heavy knocks echo outside. Suddenly, the doors swing wide, and a soldier salutes Captain Pops. He introduces himself as Secret Agent Zion White, sent to deliver urgent bunker orders directly. Their command is to capture the superhuman Lin. Corbin is stunned. He asks if this is the dirty business Lin warned them about, looking completely worried. Maggie wonders if they are safe, but Joe knows the truth. The heater is completely broken, meaning they must quickly relocate their entire base of operations. Lin agrees it is their smartest move under these brutal conditions. They can utilize the underground levels, where the central heating system is still functioning perfectly. Still, Joe warns that simply staying warm is not enough anymore. They must prepare for actual combat and build heavy defensive walls. Lin agrees with her, promising to do his absolute best to secure their entire perimeter. He asks if the security wing still has defensive gear left. Joe confirms they do, adding that they have access to far more than basic armor. Before the disaster, Brooklyn's security upgraded to some incredibly high-tech weaponry. A few weapons, some basic vests. If they play their cards right, they might survive. Clearing the entire building is possible, but Lin Mo is still highly skeptical. Will normal gear work on monsters? Kurt Corbin steps in, claiming he has a plan. A specific tone, one sound to freeze the beasts entirely in their tracks. He calls it musical power. Lin Mo laughs it off, and Joe quickly agrees. Kurt Corbin snaps. Still, Lin Mo decides the two of them will go first. They must scout below. Kurt Corbin complains the entire way, begging for a listen. Lin Mo demands silence, stop wasting time, but Kurt Corbin begs for one moment. Under the lens of the camera, Lin Mo suggests checking only the lower floors. First, Kurt Corbin must pack his guitar. Soon, they slip into a quiet apartment. Looking around, Kurt Corbin remarks that Lin Mo has been living pretty comfortably. A massive upgrade from Seattle life. He bluntly asks if Lin Mo is dirty. Is that all? Lin Mo mutters. Deep down, he reflects on his survival. In this harsh reality, even normal life feels like an impossible luxury. Those white-armored monsters brought a sudden, brutal freeze that shattered everything. A brief moment of peace. Lin Mo quietly wonders how long it can last. Everyone is exhausted. Minds and bodies are completely spent. They desperately need rest. In the bath, Joe stares at a card, trying to sort out her feelings. Maggie gazes quietly at an old photograph of her father standing beside Dorothy. No surrender. No matter how agonizing the road gets, giving up is not an option. Minds and bodies are covered in scars, but they must find a way. Survive at any cost. For Lin Mo, some truths must finally be spoken. He calls Kurt Corbin over. His friend turns, asking what is going on. Lin Mo warns him, the truth he is about to speak is completely unbelievable. Kurt Corbin is confused by the sudden gravity, but Lin Mo stands firm. Accept it or not, every word is the cold, hard truth. Kurt Corbin jokes, asking if fighting monsters completely broke his brain. But Lin Mo persists. Would a real friend fail to see the change? An old companion suddenly transforming into a superhuman. Anyone would doubt it. He lays it out. The person standing right here is not who he thinks. He is a Lin Mo from a completely different timeline, a survivor. He took over this body. The original friend Kurt Corbin knew is gone. This wild confession leaves Kurt Corbin absolutely stunned, speechless. Lin Mo understands, believing something this crazy is a massive ask. But he spoke up because Kurt Corbin was loyal to the original host. As the days pass, hiding this heavy reality will only get harder. He refuses to drag Kurt Corbin into danger by keeping him blind. Kurt Corbin chuckles, so he is basically Lin Mo without the childhood baggage. He asks if that is correct, catching Lin Mo completely off guard. Kurt Corbin smiles, suggesting they simply start over and meet again. He introduces himself as Kurt Corbin, best friend of Lin Mo. Lin Mo laughs softly. Kurt Corbin casually places a cigarette between his lips. He dismisses the mind-bending talk. At the end of the day, he is still his friend. Dying and crossing into another body, that is just typical Lin Mo stuff. He jokes that Lin Mo just wanted to sound cool. Lin Mo grabs him. Friend's hand, introducing himself as Lin Mo while telling Kurt to keep the room smoke-free. His room, Kurt quickly apologizes. Outside the building, a lone car cuts through the heavy snow. Rhodes calls Pops an old man, demanding to know why a rescue team is heading to the field. Pop stays quiet for a tense second before he finally speaks. He admits he knows Agent White is facing massive time pressure, but asks if they shouldn't exchange some crucial details before they make their move. White replies that there is absolutely no time to lose. He already knows exactly what they want to ask, and as a rescue unit, they must have already noticed the suspicious lack of briefing details provided to them. Earlier, another faction of humans is currently racing to seize the target first. Them explaining it all would take hours, so he skips straight to the heavy hitters. Points right after the sudden freeze began, the National Intelligence Bureau activated their emergency crisis protocols. At that exact moment, all communications went dead and everything fell into chaos. The entire protocol execution shattered into pure chaos. Pops adds that during that same window, their rescue team received 0 orders and was completely abandoned on standby. But he points out a crucial detail: that communication blackout was no technical glitch. White agrees, no matter how vicious those monsters are, they couldn't wipe out backup systems. That kind of perfect sabotage was definitely the work of actual human hands. The commander frowns, noting that when you look closely, this entire disaster feels way too conveniently timed. White agrees, noting that luckily, they managed to restore comms. Even so, the intelligence and biosafety divisions are deeply suspicious of the situation. They suspect this entire sequence of disasters was planned by a shadowy secret organization. Rhodes scoffs, pointing out that even the CIA has 0 record of such a group. How could the National Intelligence Group fail to spot them? Living humans still need oxygen. She literally tells him to save that ridiculous bedtime story for little kids. Having worked in intelligence herself, she knows a ghost organization always leaves a paper trail. White clarifies that they are not ghosts. The correct term is actually aspers. Rhodes asks if that is just the code name for their main target. White admits that if he had not witnessed it himself, he would call it crazy. But the proof is staring them right in the face. He reaches for his neck. He unclasps a heavy pendant from around his neck and holds it out. The sight of it shocks Pops and Rhodes, who instantly offer their quiet condolences. White explains that while this Asper group operates like ghosts, they are definitely enemies. Pops pieces it together, realizing the brass believed their target was actually one of them. Lee, steering the vehicle, guesses they're trying to recruit others, hoping he is correct. White answers that his own security clearance is not high enough to confirm that. But he admits Corporal Lei might actually be onto something here. From what he understands, Subject Zero is currently the only known Esper out there. Because of that, he is their only shot at figuring out this nightmare. That is precisely why the bunker made him their primary target. Suddenly, the brakes screech. The car grinds to a dead halt. Pops demands to know what is wrong. Lee calls out, pointing at the road. 2 survivors are standing directly in the headlights. The captain checks his mirror. This is incredibly strange, he mutters, deciding to step out and investigate. Approaching the pair, he asks if they are all right, introducing himself as an agent. He flashes his National Intelligence Bureau credentials and offers to get them help. They thank him frantically, begging for help to escape the ruined city of Brooklyn. It has become pure hell. Meanwhile, White keeps watch with his rifle ready. Pops admits that their situation is a bit complicated, despite their strong combat skills. Their urgent mission takes priority, yet his duty won't let him abandon civilians. This sudden kindness surprises the survivors. Despite his looming commitment, Pops decides to help. He tells the 2 strangers about the extra supplies stored in their vehicle. They immediately ask about the goods, their expressions twisting into something dark. Suddenly, the girl flashes a knife. Pops warns them to stay calm. He reaches for his sidearm, but the desperate survivors immediately rush to pin him. They wrestle to lock his arms. The girl lunges forward, blade raised to kill. Before she can swing, 2 precise shots rip through her chest, dropping her instantly. White was watching from afar, quickly tagging the other male attacker in the skull. Suddenly, a figure appears on a roof with a Molotov, but White spotted them first. The attacker ignites the fuse, while the sniper calmly aligns his high-powered scope. Focusing his crosshairs right on the burning bottle, he squeezes the trigger once more. The bullet explodes the glass midair. Below, Pops breaks free and delivers a heavy kick. He whips around, driving his elbow hard into the second attacker's ribcage. White supports him, ending the threat with another clean shot to the head. Pops draws his pistol, quickly double-tapping the remaining woman to secure the area. Suddenly, a crazed hostile rushes right at White with a heavy axe raised high. The sniper calmly draws his handgun, opening fire on his attacker with perfect ease. Bullets rip through the man's limbs, and White ends it with a final headshot. Pops yells that his sector is clear, and his partner echoes the exact same status. They hop back into the vehicle, where Rhodes speaks up with a heavy heart. Rhodes asks if those were really survivors. This apocalypse is driving everyone mad. He quietly hopes that Subject Zero hasn't suffered the exact same dark fate. Meanwhile, Corbin helps map out the base, while Lin and Joe draw together. Joe suggests turning this area into a lush greenhouse, and Kurt chimed in. He jokes they look like window shoppers, a real luxury in their ruined world. Basically, their layout is simple. The east wing will become a functional greenhouse. Meanwhile, the west wing of the third floor is perfect for their living quarters. Since the sixth floor is completely wrecked, staying on the third is their safest bet. Now, as for the first and second floors, they plan to fortify them heavily. We are talking deadly traps everywhere, with the security room acting as command center. Even with this solid plan, Lin feels like they are missing something crucial. Joe boasts that she could easily handle this setup back in her younger days. Corbin laughs at her bragging, and the old man suggests settling it downstairs. Kurt gladly accepts the challenge, while Lin rolls his eyes at their childishness. Suddenly, Joe calls Lin over the radio, telling him to come to her office. He asks what she wants, but the doctor says he will find out soon. Lin goes to her lab, and Joe reminds him of something he said during battle. He had mentioned spotting another survivor of his own unique kind out there. He confirms it, explaining she was the thief who took the white armor's core. Joe has something important to share, playing a recorded message for him. The recording begs survivors not to blame themselves. Lin asks what it all means. He wants to stop, but the doctor insists he keep listening. The recorded voice continues. The speaker declares that long ago, God sent a massive flood to wash away the sins of the world. This entire place was brainwashed by a government monitoring every single move. All debts, public and private, were contracts designed to force them into sin, yet God remained merciful. He promised blessings for the pure. Right at that moment, Jinwoo discovers a suit of white armor. She touches its chest, her hand turning intangible as she reaches inside. She pulls out a massive rocket launcher and aims directly at the beast, firing without hesitation. The creature is completely vaporized in a single second. Talk about absolute overkill. It promises that lost lambs will find hope in an apocalypse led by holy children. This was divine judgment on the corrupt government, shocking Corporal Lee as he listens. While the broadcast plays, Cross reaches out and touches the young girl's hand with his power. The audio warns that everyone must join them, promising the Holy Son will protect them all. He will absorb their sins before their priest leads the faithful straight to his kingdom. Once it ends, Joe asks Lin if he has any idea what that message was about. Lin assumes it is just an anti-government cult, and their Holy Son is likely in a spur. Joe admits that if that is true, it is totally possible. But things are getting incredibly serious now. For a long time, rumors of secret organizations existed. Forget the Freemasons or the Illuminati, this was about the dangerous Society of Prophets. This dark cult once handled the government's dirty work, but the rabid dog bit back. They infected the Pentagon, forcing the authorities to establish the NLSB to fight back against them. That history was almost completely buried, a dark secret that should have stayed forgotten forever. Yet this eliminated prophetic cult has suddenly resurfaced during the brutal ice apocalypse. Lin asks if everything she just revealed was supposed to be top-secret classified information. Since she only worked in biosafety, Joe explains how she really knows. Unfortunately, she had a terrible friend who worked as a top-secret intelligence agent. Well, a former agent to be exact. Suddenly, Rhodes sneezes, making Lee ask if she is okay. Rhodes sniffs and explains that the Society of Prophets was completely eradicated, not just shut down. And since the NLSB is far more competent than the CIA, she has a wild theory. This psychic cult must be from another universe entirely, just like Lin, who is basically a ghost. The young man is shocked she figured all that out. He wonders if she has been secretly listening to them through that pendant on her head. Joe exhales a cloud of smoke, teasing that their close bond is pretty sweet for two guys. Lin immediately yells that it is just a friendship. The doctor then speaks up. If that is true, she warns, the Society of Prophets might have already noticed Lin. Either way, they have a dangerous enemy to defend against. She asks if he is ever going to get moving, ordering them to pack up his gear, including his ashtray. Lin grumbles that he only called him over to lift heavy boxes. Lee turns off the radio. Lee says it makes total sense that intelligence had zero records on this cult. It fits the secretive Society of Prophets perfectly, so he asks Rhodes if she knows more. She responds that it is far deeper than a simple secret, involving the national cabinet itself. Those higher-ups definitely have plans. Suddenly, a rough hand slams over her mouth. Hop sternly reminds Sergeant Rhodes not to forget she was transferred to the field division. Meanwhile, White listens closely to an incoming audio message detailing their current situation. It warns that while comms are back online, they are highly unstable and must be quick. They have officially confirmed that the Society of Prophets is actively working with dangerous espers. Because of this, capturing Target Zero is their absolute highest priority. To get the job done fast, leadership granted him extreme executive authority. Right now, any form of resistance is treated as a direct threat to humanity. With this power, he can eliminate any obstacle however he sees fit. He is authorized to summon other agents instantly. Meanwhile, inside room 303, Maggie grips a burger and takes a massive, messy bite of it. Dorothy admits she never expected Lin to make fresh crops grow this incredibly fast. Lin says he just applied agricultural school knowledge. But if she really wants to thank anyone, it should be science. Joe opens up the fridge and spots a bottle that takes him by surprise. Dorothy explains she saved it while sorting supplies, knowing he wanted a drink. She chilled it just for him. Joe thanks her and pours some tequila. He slices a lime in half, then passes the salted glass over to Lin. Lin asks what that is. Joe says authentic tequila deserves the traditional way. To celebrate, he wants to share this classic experience with his savior. He wants them to sit back and enjoy this incredibly delicious meal together. Lin gladly accepts the glass, promising not to be overly formal about it. He rubs lime on his tongue, knocks back the shot, and sucks the lime. Joe offers a drink to the doctor, but she declines. She prefers cigarettes over alcohol, while Lin already looks a bit sick. The heavy alcohol is hitting Lin hard. Dorothy asks where Mr. Corbin is. Lin explains he is currently on duty, but Dorothy offers to deliver his portion. He says there is no need, but the kind housekeeper insists on helping. Outside, the soldiers watch closely. White orders everyone to check their comms. This critical alpha test is starting, and Rhodes confirms her signal is clear. Headquarters patches through, calling for Bravo and Delta. Pops confirms as Bravo. Lee answers as Delta. With everyone linked, the soldier leaves the radio work. Rhodes takes over, warning Pops and Lee about some weird signal interference. She needs to adjust the channel, making both agents instantly ask what is wrong. Pops quickly steps in, reassuring them the calibration will be done fast. Rhodes agrees and quietly switches their feed over to a private channel. Pops asks why she is being mysterious. Rhodes honestly questions if force is necessary. Target Zero does not seem dangerous, and she suspects their field agent is hiding things. Pops actually agrees, sensing that the higher-ups are playing a deeper game. Their intel feels way too coordinated. Something big is definitely going on. Still, as her captain, his primary goal is keeping her absolutely safe. He won't stop her, but he warns her to be incredibly careful. Rhodes signs back on, confirming the adjustments are complete and the run is live. Back inside, Lin refills Joe's glass and asks if he has a daughter. Joe reveals he had a family, but hasn't seen his little girl in 20 years. Stuck in the cold, he constantly wondered if she was even alive. Lin warns the old man to take it easy since he is still recovering. Joe drunkenly apologizes to his daughter, which leaves Lin completely stunned. Lin gently holds Joe's hand and mentions his own daughter, Wana. Joe is deeply shocked by this coincidence, but chooses to remain silent. He blames himself entirely for failing to protect his daughter and her mother. Lin laughs, prompting Joe to ask why, even as Joe begs his daughter for forgiveness. He quietly reflects that if they were not trapped in this brutal frozen wasteland, they might actually look like a normal, happy family right now. Suddenly, the lights cut out, leaving them in absolute pitch-black darkness. Joe suddenly stands up from his seat, muttering that their time has finally come. Lin asks where old Chow is going, but the silent man just ignores him. Joe simply unsheathes a massive knife, his face twisted in pure rage. Elsewhere in the apartment building, White finds a massive barricade blocking their path. He confirms it is completely blocked. Lee asks if their source was actually reliable. Hops suggests they test it anyway, and the corporal opens up a maintenance tunnel. Deciding to push through, Bravo Squad advances inside and radios back to headquarters. They report reaching the third floor, prompting Rhodes to demand a live video feed. She orders them to split up and search the area exactly as planned. They must locate the surviving civilians first and then secure their main target. White points out there are only 3 of them left to cover each other. He insists they drop all military formalities during this crisis, and the soldiers agree. They disperse, white heads straight up the dark stairwell. Third floor, a masked Joe waits silently in the shadows to strike. Lin asks about the situation, but the young man stays silent, watching the corridor. Joe offers a tense nod. Suddenly, Corbin rushes into the room with urgent news. He warns them, heavily armed men have just entered the building. These intruders definitely do not look friendly. Right then, Lee makes his entry. Lee and Pops report they are secure, but Joe suddenly drops to the floor. Pops and Lee immediately raise their weapons, aiming directly at the masked figure. He stays dead silent, while the soldiers try to determine if he is friendly. Pops announces they are with the rescue team, while Lee radios headquarters. The captain reaches out to touch Joe, assuring him they are here to help. But Joe scoffs at their promise, repeating their high-ranking military title with disdain. He asks since when did their agency care about saving human lives. Hearing this, Rhodes recognizes his face mask and quickly runs an online search. She successfully identifies him, and believe me, his file is absolutely terrifying. She warns them he is no ordinary civilian, prompting a confused question from Pops. His codename is Machete, a former agent who once decimated entire cartels. After escaping prison, he was secretly recruited to run brutal black ops. Pops realizes he is one of their own, but Joe grinds his teeth. Joe repeats those hateful words before drawing his blade in a blinding flash. He slices forward with lethal precision, screaming that Pops took everything from him. Pops' severed fingers hit the ground as Joe strikes again for taking Juana. Pops desperately grabs the blade with his bleeding hand while Joe glares at him. Joe asks how he dares call them equals before Lee lines up a shot. Lee yells for his superior to duck and fires, but the bullet ricochets harmlessly. Joe kicks Pops aside, instantly throwing a deadly kunai knife straight at Lee. The blade flies, it strikes the soldier with fatal precision. White tries calling for backup, only Static answers him. To work, and he wonders what is happening when Lin suddenly appears right behind him. Even with all this crazy wind and snow outside, people are still breaking in. They are still invading homes. Xian tries to draw his pistol, but Lin vanishes. Lin calls him a noisy intruder, while Xian recovers. Xian introduces himself as an intelligence agent, stating he is here to capture Lin. Lin vanishes into thin air once more, leaving only faint traces behind. Lin asks if he really plans to arrest him, finding the situation rather amusing. He wonders why Xian is only focused on him instead of the ice. Is it his duty to maintain order after the collapse, or is he hiding something? Xian turns around to shoot, warning Lin not to test his patience. Xian warns he will fire, but Lin tells him to make sure he can hit. Xian pulls the trigger, firing his sniper rifle with absolute perfect precision. Lin effortlessly dodges the incoming bullets and rushes forward. He strikes Xian on the head, sending his focused device flying to the ground. But Lin senses something is wrong. He definitely aimed straight for the head. Yet Xian just shrugs it off, laughing that his sharp intuition saved his life. Xian explains that Lin must be wondering why he did not twist his head. His intuition told him the exact path of the strike before it even landed. He claims he can predict Lin's next move just by how he shifts his weight. Lin demands to know who he is as Xian activates a bizarre power. Xian repeats his name and reminds him of his status as an agent. He is Xian White in a spur. Meanwhile, Rhodes desperately tries to contact Alpha. She cannot see his screen, so she signals Xian while calling headquarters. Rhodes demands reinforcements as Lee begins to panic. He screams that he and Pops are hit as throwing knives fly at them. The blades strike their armor. Joe slowly walks toward the downed pair. Lee desperately points his weapon forward, but the mysterious target suddenly vanishes. Suddenly, Joe appears right behind them. Flying stones hit him out of nowhere. This quick distraction saves the duo. Lin suddenly collides with his old friend Joe. Lin realizes he was too careless, just as a bizarre creature bursts inside. Lin turns around, catching the heavy scent of alcohol and recognizing Old Man Joe. The young man quickly helps Joe up, asking who these two strangers are. Pops tries to explain their identities, urging the others to listen to him. But the massive beast stomps its foot, cutting off any chance for explanation. Pops quickly radios headquarters, asking if this thing is just an empty shell. He informs the team that he has successfully made contact with the target. The creature glares down, preparing a deadly electrical strike. But Xian pulls some psychic strings, ordering the beast to stand down immediately. The creature freezes mid-attack, as Xian reminds everyone that Lin is the target. He warns Lin with a cold glare. The young man grits his teeth. Lin prepares for battle, knowing this is going to be a tough fight. He gently sets Zhou down and apologizes for what is about to happen. Promising him a future drink, Lin begins to transform into a terrifying monster. Xian comments that this is expected from Subject Zero, though it is still shocking. Lin demands to know what Xian is hiding as the beast lunges at him. Lin simply triggers his acceleration, watching the incoming strike freeze in slow motion. Knowing he cannot fight here, he glances back and winds up a glowing, energy-packed fist. He punches the sound barrier. The beast is dazed. White is shocked, wondering if that really was a sonic boom blocking his attacks. Lin charges, dragging the beast off the third floor. He slams the shield mid-plunge. Is it made of raw energy? A massive cloud of dust explodes as all three crash violently into the pavement. Lin rises. This is getting incredibly complicated. That power makes it dangerous, but its defensive shield is the real headache. Still, hope remains. He spots chains. If he can just capture the leader first. Meanwhile, White sneers at his futile struggle. But Lin just crouches, sprouting glowing energy wings. Speed is his key advantage. How will he know unless he tests it? He launches off the ground with insane power, destroying everything in his path. White casually dodges, mockingly asking if Lin forgot what he told him earlier. His instinct already predicted it. The beast shifts its arm into a deadly blade, readying a countercharge. White remarks that speed is not a one-way street, sending his beast rushing forward. Lin is wounded. What just happened? The giant monster is closing in again, and despite its bulk, it is lightning fast. It thrusts its blade straight ahead. Lin grabs the blade right before it pierces his throat, whispering that was too close. White aims right at his skull. Dragging a heavy corpse through this miserable storm would be a real pain. Lin retorts that White is just a dog for the Bureau, questioning if his bosses would even allow this. Before White can pull the trigger, stone fragments suddenly begin rising from the dirt. White is stunned by the floating shards. Lin bats the gun away as the swirling shards snap into a solid weapon. He dashes toward the weapon, his hand outstretched to seize his final hope. White struggles to regain his aim, but Lin is already wrapping his fingers around the hilt. He grips it tight, triggering a violent, destructive shockwave that blows right past White. White stumbles back in confusion as the entire area begins to crackle with raw electricity. Lightning crackles, his face goes pale. He rips the weapon from the earth, spinning the shaft to reveal a lethal spear. Clad in glowing blue and white armor, he settles into a lethal combat stance. It is time for round 2. White grits his teeth. The intel was correct. Lin is constantly evolving. If this keeps up, the mission is doomed, meaning he needs to end this immediately. White raises his hand, ending this right now. Beast manifests another forearm blade, unleashing a barrage of energy slashes at Lin. Lin tracks the attacks, recalling the doctor's words that blue energy means absorption. He spins his defensive spear shield. But the weapon glows crimson, bleeding a deep red color throughout his entire armor set. White is totally frozen in shock. He hurls the spear with devastating, maximum speed, vaporizing everything in its path. Everything in its path, White quickly realizes he did not just dodge the incoming strike. He converted it into pure energy while watching a spear charge his white armor. The gear readies for impact as the spear slams into the protective front barrier. The shield slowly glows a deep crimson. Lin claims the field's strength is too high. It neutralizes both attacks because the spear consists of powerful black shard fragments. This creates an identical force field after soaking up the residual energy. But unlike gentle soap bubbles, when these dual fields collide, things get messy. A massive explosion erupts, blasting the creature right past White. The stunned soldier wonders how his heavy white armor was so easily shattered. Still, White casually tosses the beast straight back toward the barrier. He tells the injured monster to take a break before asking Lin if he wants to continue. The boy snaps back that he is not foolish enough to challenge White's sharp instincts. But without his trusty pet, White cannot do much to harm him either. White slowly echoes those words, focusing on the part about being a pet. Lin raises his spear, declaring they are locked in a complete standoff. White chuckles, asking if Subject Zero is blind to his own bizarre appearance. After all, the kid looks exactly like those icy monsters born from the snow. Lin thinks he has a real chance, but White is about to break this stalemate. He suddenly shouts for his ally to take action, and a guitar starts strumming. Lin spins around as massive speakers blast a shockingly familiar rock melody. He clutches his head in absolute agony, wondering what is happening to him. The blonde guitarist starts singing, and Lin feels the inner parasite resisting. But the lyrics urge him to wake up when September ends, shattering the parasite. The dark creature tears itself free from his body and collapses onto the dirt. Completely separated from Lin Mo, the exhausted boy faints while reaching for the instrument. Suddenly, Corbin appears and catches his hand. White grumbles that he took his time. Corbin apologizes, casually asking if he missed any of the wild action. It does not matter now. The primary objective is officially secure. Kurt shrugs off the gratitude, flashback to 30 minutes earlier in the surveillance room. He was half asleep on the desk, casually reviewing the security feed of the break-in. Suddenly, the main heavy doors of the monitor room swing wide open. White immediately presses a cold gun barrel against the terrified young man's head. Waking up to 3 armed men is a total nightmare. Kurt quickly defends himself. He swears he stopped dealing with any hidden herbs a long time ago. White begins chanting bizarre phrases, forcing the dazed recruit to repeat them. Tranced, he murmurs about the bad boys unit. White calls it a weapon. Corbin robotically responds that Agent 21 is online and ready for action. Lee asks what is happening, but Bravo clarifies these are highly trained field agents. The legendary elite of the bad boys. Suddenly, Corbin faceplants hard onto the keyboard. He lies completely unconscious. Bravo asks if Rhodes was behind this strange event. Lee shrugs and Rhodes denies involvement, blaming the ancient tech in the facility. Remote access is down, meaning this weird blackout is just a simple system glitch. Corbin snaps awake. White orders the team to prepare to capture Lin Mo. They must secure Subject Zero and find any survivors immediately. Corbin grabs his phone to pinpoint their coordinates, urging them to wait up. Blackout, Subject Zero, and the survivors likely relocated. It was indeed smarter to split up. Capturing Subject Zero, however, required far more firepower. Their weapons were useless. He had a backup plan but needed something first. Maggie demanded answers. Why had Mr. Lin run off as well, then? She spotted a hidden camera. Dorothy panicked, desperately asking if they were dealing with monsters. Corbin denied it. Meanwhile, Zoe noticed Maggie quietly stealing a device from Corbin's box. Maggie apologized. The doctor approached, demanding to see what she found. She realized it was actually a surveillance camera, marked with the address of the National Intelligence Bureau. Corbin instantly drew his weapon, ordering the doctor to show her hands. Dorothy screamed, but Corbin ignored her, accusing the doctor of being the anti-bioterrorism commander. Joe calmly retorted that Corbin was the real villain, but he barked at her to shut up. Suddenly, the doctor drew a gun from her jacket, prompting Corbin to fire. The hot bullet hissed through the air, but dropped harmlessly right in front of Joe. Nearby, Dorothy and Maggie cower in fear. Joe just kept walking, leaving her severed locks to drift onto the dusty floor. Corbin warned her to restrain herself, cold eyes promising he wouldn't miss next time. He ordered her to keep her hands visible and slowly turn around. Joe complained that field agents were always so heavy-handed, running a hand through her short hair. She asked if his main target was her test subject and if Corbin was acting like a friend to monitor him, despite his wiped memories. Corbin demanded to know what she meant, but his radio suddenly crackled. The dispatch reported that Team Alpha was dark, while Bravo and Delta were injured. Corbin reported finding survivors, asking to transfer the wounded since a doctor was present. Bravo's voice crackled back over the radio, urgently asking about the wounded men. They were still breathing, but their survival was far from guaranteed. Still, their wounds had already been stitched, so he didn't need to worry. He asked if Agent Rhodes could switch over to a secure private channel now. She agreed, but Joe chimed in, telling him he should show some gratitude first. Corbin scoffed, calling her a rogue agent and blaming her for the frozen city. He scoffed at the rogue agents, asking what she thought she could achieve. Joe calmly replied that the Bureau was the one doing the betraying. Dropping the name Project Europa, hearing that word sent a visible shiver through Corbin. The doctor casually explained she was talking about Jupiter's frozen second moon. Historically, researchers believed it was the most promising place in our solar system to support life outside of Earth. even though it was a completely frozen world. She asked if he recognized the similarity to New York now, wondering why his superiors chose that specific name. It had nothing to do with space exploration, but was entirely about the Society of Prophets. Corbin suddenly lashed out at her, shoving his pistol in her face and snarling that he had heard enough. Joe calmly asked if he was in a rush, but Corbin snarled that if she didn't hold the files on Subject Zero, she would be a corpse, murmuring something to her. Hop stared blankly into the corner. Suddenly, Corbin slapped her before turning to tell headquarters that he was bringing Alpha back and to prepare for the survivors. Joe wiped her lip, quietly asking what he was so terrified of. Outside, dawn was breaking and Lin found himself heavily bound under guard. Bundled up like a packaged parcel, Lee nervously asks what happens if he suddenly wakes up. Corbin tells him not to worry. Even if he does wake up, it will be completely useless. He won't use his powers for a while. A heavy dose of insulin did the trick. That massive amount is all thanks to the research of that traitorous doctor. Corbin tells Lei that he will carry him, and the young man quickly agrees. Apologizing to his gagged friend, Lee asks what they should do now. Hops only wants to know why he joined the National Intelligence Bureau in the first place. The corporal wonders why on earth he wants that answer so suddenly. But Pops realizes the kid might be caught up in something absolutely terrible. White arrives asking about their injuries because he has some seriously good news. Main communications are finally back online, and they just made contact with a nearby hospital shelter. It is a little far away, but Lei is relieved and thanks him for the update. But White stops him. There is one more thing before they can actually leave. He asks if they spotted any monsters in the apartment, looking like empty husks. Lee denies seeing anything like that, so White turns to ask the lieutenant instead. Lieutenant denies it too, saying they met absolutely nobody other than the civilians. White says that is wonderful and thanks his rescue team colleagues. He says it was a true pleasure working together, and then they finally depart. They finally take off, but White Cross asks Jinyu why she did not act immediately. After cutting the power, she noticed there were rats sneaking among the flock of sheep. And hiding right among those rats was a wolf, so she waited for the fight to end. Cross replies that in that case, he and Arena have handled absolutely everything. Jinyu puts on her glasses, saying it was done in the name of the Holy Father. As the truck drives off, little Maggie cries out for her mother from inside the car. Riding with Joe, Corbin, Dorothy, and unconscious Lin, she asks what is wrong with him. Why is he tied up like this, along with the medical sister and Uncle Joe? Joe asks about the old man, but he just wonders when she changed her hair. Maggie demands to know why they look so miserable if they are not bad people. She points her finger right at Corbin, surprising him with her sudden question. Maggie asks what happened to her guitar-playing brother, while Dorothy tries to explain. She insists he is still Kurt, but the little girl adamantly denies it. Joe laughs at the drama, making an annoyed Kurt snap and ask what is so funny. The doctor explains that sometimes only a child's perspective can see the real truth. He agrees, adding that the nickname Guitar Brother fits him quite well. Corbin takes that as a total insult. Meanwhile, Rhodes spots smoke and calls his father. He grumbles about his dad smoking again, while Lee tries to soothe his senior. Lee says not to worry, the sergeant is just anxious. Rhodes asks about his injury. Lee says he is fine, especially when compared to the sergeant's nasty wounds.